Fei Lu Novel Network A.Level Contracted Novel. Global Cataclysm. Unlimited Upgrade Shelter, awakening to the shelter system at the beginning, there are still 2 months left until the global disaster. Meteorite fall, soaring radiation, ice age, terror rat disaster, infinite typhoon, extreme heat, volcano eruption. Faced with the impending catastrophe, Zhao Chen began to build his own shelter. Rock refuge, steel refuge, tungsten steel refuge, Xinjiang refuge, machine gun turret, multi-barrel machine gun bunker, heavy gun bunker, light edge fortress, cold weapon manufacturing platform, firearms workbench, heavy cannon manufacturing room, mech manufacturing hall, large RVs. Armed RVs. Heavy tank vehicles. Time and space vehicles, PS. This book is about the flow of post-apocalyptic survival, allowing shelters to upgrade infinitely and resist various major disasters. Fei Lu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Doomsday Survival Fundamentals Handbook, Materials. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Food. Because I personally believe that food is more important, it is placed first. Whether it is a natural disaster or a biochemical crisis of the end of the world, food is very important, and food is divided into what to eat and what to drink. When the end of the world comes suddenly, if you are at home, pack and bring what you can eat at home as soon as possible. If you don't go out quickly to find something to eat, it will be difficult to grab food if your fists are not very hard when many people react. It is best to bring convenient foods, such as instant noodles, compressed biscuits, etc., which are easy to process. Additionally, these foods have a longer shelf life, and of course, they are the best foods to bring in the early stages for easy transportation. Food. There is also something to drink in the mouth. As the end of the world approaches, it is best to ensure that you have access to a clean water source. Because many diseases are caused by unclean food at the entrance. Whether it's a natural disaster or a biochemical crisis, it's important to ensure that you eat as clean as possible. Clothing. Nowadays, many people's lives are relatively good, and I believe that clothing is not lacking. But once the end of the world approaches, I believe many people will lose their clothes. There may be a cold day at the end of the world, and without enough warm clothes, a person's body will not function properly. But after the end of the world approaches, it is impossible to stay at home because your home cannot always be safe, unless it is a secluded paradise or a place not heavily affected by disasters. However, our main focus is on how to survive in the end of the world, so we won't discuss this anymore. If you have a car, it's best to bring winter clothes because you don't know if it will be cold in the future. People without cars may be more troublesome because they need to escape to a safe place, and you don't know when to return, nor do you know what will happen on the way. So it's best to bring food and clothes with most of the things you bring, regardless of whether it's hot or cold when the end of the world approaches. It's best to put several winter clothes on your body, which won't take up space. In case it gets cold in the future, you'll still have clothes to wear. Okay. The end of the world may be when walking in a safe zone or searching for supplies. People with cars should try to get as much gasoline as possible, stop at gas stations as much as possible, and store more fuel that can make the car move. People who don't have a car should not carry heavy items when traveling. Try to bring the most important food, drinks, and clothing, otherwise it will be exhausting. Whether you have a car or not, it is best to follow the main army or follow the army at this time, and not to go on the road alone or with a family. When following a large army, it is best to communicate and exchange information with the people around you, so as to maximize the acquisition of information. Otherwise, when something suddenly happens, you don't know anything. When following a large army, try not to forget densely populated areas. When walking, try to be on the edge, as many people subconsciously believe that the middle is the safest. Actually, it's not the case. In the middle, when an unexpected event occurs, the person in the middle is most likely to experience a stampede. If following the army, it is best to follow outside the army. Stay. At the beginning of the end of the world, it is best not to leave your place of residence rashly unless it is an earthquake or other situation that causes your place of residence to collapse. It's best to find food and drink as quickly as possible in the place where you were at the time of the apocalypse, and then calm yourself down. If someone is with you, it's best to discuss what to do next. In fact, it's best to find enough food and drink to wait in place for rescue for a period of time, and then try to find ways to obtain external information as much as possible to understand whether there is rescue or when rescue will come. If there is no rescue, then plan how to self-rescue with the people around you or yourself. The end of the world has occurred for some time and you have safely arrived at a safe zone. If you have the option, it is best to choose a place that is relatively close to where government officials or military personnel reside. Try to get a house, as it can block some air conditioning if the weather gets cold. Moreover, houses can ensure safety and protect one's own property. Clothing, food, housing, and transportation have all been mentioned, and the above are the most basic. Now let's talk about some important things. Medicine. It is best to bring commonly used medicine and a medicine box. It is inevitable to bump or encounter unexpected events on the way to escape. If you bring medicine, your life is more guaranteed. Weapons. When it comes to carrying weapons, it's not about robbing or bullying others, but rather about using them to deter others and prevent yourself from losing the ability to resist when others attack you. Fei Lu's novel, Fei Wants You to Look Good. How to Build a Post-Apocalyptic Shelter, Information. You are listening at novelfull.audio. So Yen, are you interested in digging a basement? Dig dozens of square meters and several rooms of basement under one's own house, and cast it into a steel plate concrete structure. Then lay a layer of aluminum plate for radiation protection, and finally customize several 300 mm thick vault doors on top. Reserve several ventilation openings, and if conditions permit, create a clean air system. If conditions permit, store activated carbon and other materials for your own benefit. The cost in this regard is approximately 200,000 yuan. We also need to build a septic tank and biogas digester power generation system, although the land occupation is too large and there are too many projects, which are not suitable for urban construction. We still need to buy dozens of square meters of solar panels to store, and when the environment improves, they can be installed on the rooftop to generate electricity, which is not easily discovered and is particularly suitable for high-rise buildings. This system costs around 100,000 yuan, of course. If the quality is poor, you can also lower the price by tens of thousands, but the end of the day. Use things from third-rate manufacturers. It will be very uncomfortable, right? Storing food can be quite troublesome. Due to the issue of shelf life, there are very few foods that can be stored for several years. If they are not eaten and even moldy, it can be embarrassing. Prioritize storing food with a long shelf life during peacetime. For example, rice, sugar, salt, honey, wine, various pickled vegetables, dry goods, etc. Other cans, compressed biscuits, mineral water, and other products with shorter shelf life are best reserved for purchase in large quantities before signs of doomsday appear. Finally, there is the issue of storage. It is best to plan a room specifically in the basement or add a refrigerator to the room, which can be frozen year-round and used specifically for storing food. Except for canned foods that are already packaged, it is best to vacuum dry foods such as rice and dry goods that are prone to insect infestation. In this way, there should be no problem keeping it for 10 years. As for the price, let's take a closer look. On average, one person eats 2 meals a day, and one person needs to drink an average of 1 bottle of mineral water, 1/3 of canned fruits, 1/3 of canned meat, and 4 or 2 meters per day to maintain their health needs. A family of 3 needs to consume 3 bottles of mineral water, 5 cans of various canned goods, and 1 pound and 2 liang of rice per day. 90 bottles of mineral water, 1 can of rice, and 40 kilograms of rice were consumed in just 1 month. If a family of 3 wanted to survive in a shelter for 10 years, they would need tens of thousands of bottles of mineral water, over 3,000 cans, and 5,000 kilograms of rice. The cost of mineral water is 2 yuan per bottle, and the cost of canned water is 5 yuan per bottle, and the cost of rice is 1 yuan per kilogram. The price is about 50,000 yuan. Of course, you can also dig wells to extract groundwater, but the groundwater in cities cannot be praised, while in rural areas it is okay. Tools such as hammers, nails, half-angle wrenches, ring wrenches, hexagonal wrenches, flashlights, batteries, axes, gasoline, etc. all require 2 sets. To prevent loss and damage. I won't go into detail about these based on this calculation. It would require at least 500,000 yuan in funding to establish a complete shelter system, and there are many aspects that I have not included. However, it may ensure your safety for the next 10 years in the apocalypse. Of course, if the apocalypse does not come, you can also build it as a family heirloom to play with. Basic requirements. The construction of shelters should be based on the basic principles of emergency evacuation needs, safety, practicality, and life-saving. 2. Places where people are working underground should have shelters, and the distance from the shelter to the work site should be determined based on the principle that miners can safely reach with self-rescue devices, generally not exceeding 1000 m. China takes 750 m. 3. The rated number of people in the shelter should meet the shelter needs of the maximum number of people working simultaneously in all service areas, and consider a margin of no less than 5%. 4. The shelter should be located in a location with no abnormal stress, complete roof, and intact support. Non-combustible materials should be used for support within a range of 20 meters in front and behind to ensure smooth and fast evacuation routes in the tunnel. 5. Shelters should have clear and eye-catching signage. The mine disaster avoidance route map should clearly indicate the location, specifications, and types of shelters, so that miners can quickly reach the shelters. 6. Shelters should be equipped with concise and easy-to-understand usage instructions and operating instructions. 7. The shelter should be managed and maintained by a dedicated person to ensure that it is always in a normal standby state. 8. Regularly provide safety training for personnel entering the mine to improve the emergency rescue capabilities of miners. Technical Requirement 1. Shelters should have safety protection, oxygen supply, harmful gas treatment, temperature and humidity control, water, electricity, and communication to ensure the survival of evacuees for more than 96 hours. 2. The per capita air supply of the shelter shall not be less than 0.3 cubic meters per minute, and the oxygen concentration shall be between 18.5% and 22%. The internal and external tunnels shall always be in a positive pressure state of not less than 200 pascals to prevent the infiltration of toxic gases. 3. The absorption capacity of CO2 shall not be less than 0.5 liters per minute per person, and the absorption capacity of CO shall not be less than 400 ppm/h, ensuring that the CO2 concentration is less than 1%, the CO concentration is less than 24 ppm, the air temperature is not higher than 35 degrees, and the humidity is not higher than 85%. The first impermeable fixed shelter in China. The first impermeable fixed shelter in China. 4. Equipped with environmental parameter detection instruments such as CO2, CO, O2, CH4, etc. 5. Equipped with direct telephone communication with the well dispatch room. 6. Provide food and drinking water, with food not less than 2000 kj/person *day and drinking water not less than 0.5 L/person *day. 7. There should be clear and eye-catching signs outside the shelter, and there should be a first aid kit, toolbox, firefighting and sewage equipment inside. 8. Various electrical equipment, instruments, chemical agents, etc. should comply with relevant national safety standards. Fei Lu's novel, Fei Wants You to Look Good. Global Natural Disasters, Data. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Throughout human history, it can be seen that there are two main causes of disasters: natural variation and human influence. Natural disasters refer to natural phenomena that endanger human survival or damage human living environment, including drought, high temperature, low temperature, cold wave, flood, mountain torrent, typhoon, tornado, flame tornado, hail, wind hail, frost, rainstorm, snow, freezing rain, fog, strong wind, ice, haze, fog, earthquake, tsunami, landslide, debris flow, floating dust, sand blowing, sandstorm, lightning, thunderstorm, spherical lightning, volcanic eruptions, etc. The natural variations on Earth, including those induced by human activities, nurture natural disasters in the Earth's surface environment composed of the atmosphere, lithosphere, hydrosphere, and biosphere. When this mutation causes harm to human society, it constitutes a natural disaster. Because it has caused varying degrees of damage to human production and life, including the relationship between humans and nature mediated by labor, as well as the relationships between people related to it. Disasters are all negative or destructive effects. So, natural disasters are a manifestation of the contradiction between humans and nature, with dual attributes of nature and society, and are one of the most severe challenges that humanity has faced in the past, present, and future. Major sudden natural disasters worldwide include droughts, floods, typhoons, storm surges, frost damage, hailstorms, tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanoes, landslides, mudslides, forest fires, agricultural and forestry pests and diseases, cosmic radiation, and red tides, which are rare and have little impact. There are various types of common natural disasters in the land space of China, mainly including floods, droughts, meteorological disasters such as typhoons, hail, blizzards, sandstorms, volcanic and earthquake disasters, geological disasters such as mountain collapses, landslides, mudslides, ocean disasters such as storm surges and tsunamis, forest and grassland fires, and major biological disasters. Natural disasters are abnormal events in the evolution of geographical environments, but they have become one of the most important natural factors hindering the development of human society. The natural disaster system is a surface variation system of the Earth composed of the disaster environment, disaster-causing factors, and disaster-bearing bodies. The disaster situation is the result of the interaction of various subsystems in this system. Natural disasters are abnormal phenomena and events that occur in the natural world that humans rely on, and have caused harm to human society. Among them are sudden disasters such as earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, mudslides, tsunamis, typhoons, tornadoes, floods, etc. There are also gradual disasters such as ground subsidence, land subsidence, desertification, drought, and coastline changes that can only gradually manifest over a long period of time. There are also environmental disasters caused by human activities such as changes in the ozone layer, water pollution, soil erosion, and acid rain. There is a complex interrelationship between these natural disasters and environmental damage. It has become a common theme of the international community for humanity to understand the occurrence, development, and minimize the harm caused by these disasters from a scientific perspective. Natural disasters refer to phenomena or a series of events caused by abnormal natural changes, such as casualties, property damage, social instability, and resource destruction. Its formation must meet two conditions. One is to have natural mutations as triggers, and the other is to have damaged people, property, and resources as objects to withstand disasters. Disasters are a collective term for events that can cause destructive effects on humans and the environment they rely on for survival. Throughout human history, it can be seen that there are two main causes of disasters: natural variation and human influence. Therefore, disasters caused by natural variation are usually referred to as natural disasters, such as earthquakes, storms, and tsunamis. Disasters caused primarily by human influence are referred to as man-made disasters, such as fires, traffic accidents, and acid rain caused by human activities. There are three factors that affect the magnitude of natural disasters: the environment that nurtures the disaster environment, the factors that cause the disaster causing factor, and the object that bears the disaster, the disaster-affected body. The process of natural disasters can vary in length, severity, and urgency. Some natural disasters, such as volcanic eruption, earthquake, flood, hurricane, storm surge, hail, snow disaster and rainstorm, will behave as disasters in a few days, hours, or even minutes or seconds when the change of disaster-causing factors exceeds a certain intensity. Such disasters are called sudden natural disasters. Drought, crop and forest diseases, pests, weeds, etc., although they usually occur within a few months, the formation and end of disasters are still relatively rapid and obvious, so they are also listed as sudden natural disasters. In addition, there are also some natural disasters that gradually manifest as disasters in the long-term development of disaster-causing factors, such as desertification, soil erosion, environmental degradation, etc. These types of disasters usually take several years or more to develop, and are called delayed natural disasters. Many natural disasters, especially those with high levels and intensity, often trigger a series of other disasters to occur one after another, which is called a disaster chain. The earliest effective disaster in the disaster chain is called a primary disaster. The disasters induced by primary disasters are called secondary disasters. After natural disasters occur, they destroy the harmonious conditions for human survival, which can also lead to a series of other disasters, commonly known as derivative disasters. After a severe drought, the surface and shallow freshwater are extremely scarce, forcing people to drink groundwater with high fluoride content in deep layers, leading to fluoride diseases, which are all known as derivative disasters. Of course, the process of disasters is often very complex. Sometimes, a disaster can be caused by several causes, or a single cause can cause several different disasters simultaneously. At this point, the determination of the type of disaster should be based on the dominant cause of the disaster and its main manifestations. The characteristics of natural disasters can be summarized in 6 aspects. Firstly, natural disasters are widespread and regional in nature. On the one hand, the distribution range of natural disasters is very wide. Whether it is in the ocean or on land, above or underground, urban or rural, plains, hills, mountains, or plateaus, as long as there is human activity, natural disasters are likely to occur. On the other hand, the regional nature of the natural geographical environment determines the regional nature of natural disasters. Secondly, natural disasters are frequent and uncertain, with a large number of natural disasters of all sizes occurring worldwide every year. In recent decades, the number of natural disasters has shown an increasing trend, and the uncertainty of the time, location, and scale of natural disasters has greatly increased the difficulty for people to resist them. Thirdly, natural disasters have a certain periodicity and non-repeatability. Among the main natural disasters, whether it is earthquakes, droughts, floods, their occurrence all exhibit a certain periodicity. The commonly referred to natural disasters as once every 10 years, once every 100 years, are actually a popular description of the periodicity of natural disasters. The non-repeatability of natural disasters mainly refers to the non-repeatability of the disaster process and damage results. Fourthly, natural disasters are interconnected. The correlation between natural disasters is manifested in 2 aspects. On the one hand, there is connectivity between regions. For example, the occurrence of an El Niño phenomenon on the west coast of South America may lead to global meteorological disturbances. The industrial waste gases emitted by the United States often form acid rain within Canada. On the other hand, there is a correlation between disasters. That is to say, certain natural disasters can serve as conditions for each other, forming disaster clusters or chains. For example, volcanic activity is a disaster group or chain. Volcanic activity can lead to a series of disasters such as volcanic eruptions, melting of ice and snow, mudslides, and air pollution. Fifth, the harm caused by various natural disasters is severe. For example, there are about 5 million recorded earthquakes worldwide each year, of which about 50,000 are felt earthquakes and nearly 1,000 cause damage. Strong earthquakes with a magnitude of 7 or higher that are capable of causing heavy losses occur about 15 times a year, and the economic losses caused by drought and floods are also very serious, reaching tens of billions of dollars worldwide each year. Sixth, natural disasters are inevitable and reducible. Due to the constant contradiction between humans and nature, natural disasters cannot disappear as long as the earth is in motion, materials are changing, and humans exist. From this perspective, natural disasters are inevitable. However, intelligent humans can prevent and reduce disasters on an increasingly broad scale by taking measures such as avoiding harm and seeking benefits, eliminating harm and promoting benefits, turning harm into benefits, and seeking benefits from harm. From this perspective, natural disasters can be mitigated to the greatest extent possible. The main impacts of natural disasters. 1. Disasters can bring substantial trauma and mental disorders. 2. The vast majority of pain disappears within 1 or 2 years after a disaster, and people are able to self-adjust. 3. Chronic mental disorders caused by disasters are very rare. 4. The overall impact of some disasters may be positive, as it may increase social cohesion. 5. The disaster disrupted the lives of organizations, families, and individuals. Natural disasters can cause stress, anxiety, depression, and other emotional and perceptual problems. The timing of the impact and why some people cannot adapt as soon as possible are still unknown. After floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, and other natural disasters, victims may exhibit negative thoughts, anxiety, depression, and other emotional problems that persist for a year. The sustained effects of an extreme disaster are called post-traumatic stress disorder, which refers to the persistent, unnecessary, and uncontrollable thoughts of unrelated events after experiencing trauma, a strong desire to avoid mentioning events, sleep disorders, social withdrawal, and a strong sense of anxiety disorder. Meteorological disaster. There are more than 20 types of meteorological disasters, mainly including the following types. 1. Rainstorm. Flash floods, river flooding, urban ponding. 2. Rainfall and waterlogging. Waterlogging and waterlogging. 3. Drought. Drought in agriculture, forestry, and grassland, water shortage in industry, cities, and rural areas, and land desertification. 4. Dry hot wind. Dry wind, feign wind. 5. High temperature, heat waves. Scorching heat, human diseases, burns, crop ripening. 6. Tropical cyclone. Gale, rainstorm, flood. 7. Cold damage. Crops, livestock, and fruit trees are affected due to strong cooling and low temperatures. 8. Frost damage. Frost damage, crop and livestock frost damage, water pipes and oil pipes frost damage. 9. Frozen rain. Electric wires, tree branches, and road surfaces freeze. 10. Ice formation. The river, lake, and sea surfaces are frozen, and the road surface freezes after rain and snow. 11. Snow damage. Blizzards, snow accumulation. 12. Hailstorm damage. Damaging crops and houses. 13. Wind damage. Fallen trees, fallen houses, overturned cars, overturned ships. 14. Tornadoes. Local destructive disasters. 15. Thunder and lightning. Casualties caused by lightning strikes. 16. Thick fog. Human diseases, traffic obstruction. 17. Low altitude wind shear. Aircraft, aviation crash. 18. Dust storms. Death of humans and animals, collapse of buildings, reduced agricultural production, air pollution, and loss of topsoil. Marine disasters. 1. Storm surge. Cold air from high latitudes interacts with tropical cyclones from the sea, causing coastal winds and huge waves to occur one after another, thus forming a storm surge. The Western Pacific is the region with the highest production of storm surges. Type of storm surge. Typhoon type, cold high pressure combined with the yellow and bohai cyclone types. Horizontal cold high pressure type, strong isolated cyclone type in the Yellow and Bohai Seas, strong Mongolian low pressure type. The spatial distribution of storm surge disasters. Storm surges in our country spread throughout coastal areas, but the main concentrated areas from north to south are Liezhou Bay, from the mouth of Shaoyang River in Jiangsu to Dihaimen in Zhejiang, Wenzhou, Taizhou, Shaoqing to Minjiang Estuary, Shantou the Pearl River Estuary, Guangdong, the eastern coast of Liezhou Peninsula and the northeast coast of Hainan Island. 2. Catastrophic waves. Waves that cause disasters at sea are called catastrophic waves. The formation of catastrophic waves. Caused by weather systems such as typhoons, temperate cyclones, and cold waves, and formed under the influence of strong winds. Disastrous waves classified by weather system type. Cold high pressure type, also known as cold wave type, typhoon type, cyclone type, cold high pressure and cyclone coordination type. 3. Sea ice. Sea ice is formed by the freezing of harmful water, including river ice and icebergs that flow into the ocean. Sea ice is one of the prominent marine disasters in polar regions and certain high-latitude regions. Disasters caused by sea ice. Overthrowing offshore oil platforms, damaging marine engineering facilities, waterway facilities, or colliding with ships to cause major maritime accidents, obstruction of ship navigation, damage to propellers or hull, and loss of navigation capability. Sea ice blockade of ports, causing them to be unable to operate normally or significantly increasing the cost of using icebreakers for navigation, causing prolonged fishing bans and damaging marine aquaculture facilities and sites, resulting in economic losses. The main characteristics of sea ice disasters include the Bohai Sea, northern Yellow Sea, and coastal waters of the Liaodong Peninsula, which are prone to freezing in winter in China, as well as some bays in the Shandong Peninsula. 4. Tsunamis. Tsunamis are mainly marine disasters caused by violent earthquakes in countries along the Pacific coast. The conditions for the formation of tsunamis. The underwater earthquake source that caused the tsunami is relatively shallow, generally less than 20 kilometers to 50 kilometers, the magnitude is generally above 6.5 on the Richter scale, there must be extensive vertical movement of the seabed. The sea area where underwater earthquakes occur must have a certain depth of water, especially for large tsunamis that cross the ocean, usually with a depth of over 1,000 meters. The harm of tsunamis. The manifestation of tsunamis in coastal areas is the sudden rise of seawater, forming a water wall that moves towards the shore, accompanied by a loud rumble, instantly invading the coastal land, swallowing up fertile fields, towns, and villages, and then the seawater suddenly recedes or rises again, sometimes repeatedly, causing huge losses to human life and property. 5. Red tide. The concept of red tide. Red tide is the sudden increase in value of some small phytoplankton, protozoa, or bacteria in seawater under certain environmental conditions, causing discoloration of seawater within a certain range for a period of time. The harm of red tide. Causing ocean anomalies, locally disrupting the marine food chain, and threatening the survival of marine organisms. Some red tide organisms excrete mucus from outside the body or decompose it after death, which can be flipped over, filtered and breathed by marine animals, causing them to suffocate and die. Or the toxins contained in red tide organisms can be ingested by marine animals, causing poisoning and death of fish, shrimp, shellfish, and other organisms. Some can also cause poisoning and death of vertebrates and humans after consumption. In the following sections, we will introduce several common and widespread natural disasters, as well as some disaster prevention and relief measures. 6. El Niño phenomenon. Refers to the abnormal and continuous warming of seawater in the tropical oceans of the eastern and central Pacific Ocean, causing changes in the global climate pattern, resulting in drought in some areas and excessive rainfall in others. Flood disasters. 1. Rainstorm disaster. 2. Mountain torrents. 3. Snow melting floods. 4. Ice flood. 5. Dam breach flood. 6. Mudslide and cement flood. Geologic hazard. Both natural variation and human activities can lead to changes in the geological environment or geological bodies. When these changes reach a certain level, consequences such as landslides, mudslides, ground subsidence, rock swelling, liquefaction of sand and soil, land freeze-thaw, soil salinization, land desertification, earthquakes, volcanoes, geothermal hazards, etc., can cause harm to humans and society. This phenomenon is called geological hazard. Geological hazards also include derived disasters. 1. Debris flow. Debris flow is a special flood flow with a large amount of sand and stones in mountain valleys, which is triggered by rainstorm, ice and snow melting and other water sources. The formation of debris flows requires the following three conditions to be met simultaneously. Steep terrain and landforms that facilitate water and material collection, rich loose material, there is a large amount of water source in a short period of time. Debris flows can be classified into three categories based on their material composition. Those composed of a large amount of cohesive soil and sand particles and stones of varying sizes are called debris flows. Clay flow is mainly composed of cohesive soil with small amounts of clay particles, stones, and high viscosity, forming a thick mud-like state. A water-stone flow is composed of water and sand particles and stones of varying sizes. The hazards of debris flows. Harm to residential areas, hazards to highways and railways, hazards to water conservancy and hydropower projects, hazards to mines. 2. Landslide. The phenomenon in which a rock mass on a landslide slides downwards along a certain weak surface, or weak zone, due to various reasons under the influence of gravity is called a landslide. Commonly known as walking mountains, crossing mountains, earth sliding, etc. The conditions for landslides. Slope rock and soil can only have the conditions for downward sliding when they are cut and separated into a partially continuous state by various structural planes. The intensity of landslide activity is mainly related to the scale, speed, distance, accumulated potential energy, and generated kinetic energy of the landslide. The activity time of landslides is mainly related to various external factors that induce landslides, such as earthquakes, rainfall, freeze-thaw cycles, tsunamis, storm surges, and human activities. 3. Collapse. Collapse, also known as collapse, or collapse, is a geological phenomenon in which the rock mass on a steep slope suddenly detaches from its parent body under the action of gravity, collapses, rolls, and accumulates at the foot of the slope, or ditch rock. According to the composition of the collapsed material, landslides can be divided into two categories: soil landslides and rock landslides. Activity time of collapse. Collapse generally occurs in the process of rainstorm and long-term continuous rainfall or later, in a strong process, during or shortly after the excavation process at the foot of the slope, during the initial stage of reservoir storage and the peak flood period of the river, after strong mechanical vibrations and large explosions. Regional characteristics of landslides. The southwest region is the main area of landslide distribution in China. 4. Ground subsidence. Ground subsidence is a phenomenon of crustal deformation caused by long-term drought, which lowers the groundwater level, and excessive exploitation of groundwater. 5. Earthquakes. Earthquakes are a highly destructive natural disaster. In addition to landslides, ground fissures, and collapsed houses directly caused by earthquakes, it can also cause secondary disasters such as fires, floods, explosions, landslides, mudslides, the spread of toxic gases, and epidemics. Earthquake disaster. 1. Structural earthquake. 2. Collapse earthquake. 3. Mining earthquake. 4. Reservoir earthquakes, etc. Crop biology. 1. Crop diseases. There are more than 240 kinds of rice diseases, 50 kinds of wheat diseases, 40 kinds of corn diseases, 40 kinds of cotton diseases, and many kinds of diseases such as soybean, peanut, hemp, etc. 2. Crop pest control. There are mainly 252 types of rice pests, over 100 types of water wheat pests, 52 types of corn pests, Over 300 types of cotton pests, and various other crop pests. 3. Crop weed damage. About 8,000 types. 4. Rat infestation. Forest biology. 1. Forest diseases. 2,918 species. 2. Forest pests. 5,020 species. 3. Forest rodent infestation. Over 160 species. Astronomical disaster refers to the abnormal changes that occur in space celestial bodies or their states, such as the surface of the Sun, solar wind, magnetosphere, ionosphere, and thermosphere, instantaneously or in a short period of time, such as strong coronal mass ejections, large flares, high-speed solar winds, magnetic storms, sudden disturbances in the ionosphere, etc., which can cause the collapse of satellite operation, communication, navigation, and power station transmission. Networks endanger human life and health, and cause social and economic losses. Including impacts from small celestial bodies, such as meteorites, there is a possibility of causing physical and property damage to humans. Other disasters type in addition to disasters such as earthquakes, floods, typhoons, and epidemics that seriously affect our lives and even threaten our lives, we also need to constantly improve our awareness and strengthen our prevention capabilities against other disasters such as lightning, fog, and hail. Thunder. 1. The formation of lightning weather accompanied by thunder and lightning is called a thunderstorm in meteorology. During thunderstorm weather, when the potential difference between clouds and the ground reaches a certain intensity, discharge occurs, and lightning strikes the ground or certain objects, causing lightning strikes. According to research, the current intensity of lightning strikes can usually reach tens of thousands of amperes, and the temperature can reach 20,000 degrees Celsius. The degree of harm caused by such strong current and high temperature can be imagined. 2 measures to prevent lightning strikes. 1. On thunderstorms, people should try to stay indoors and not go out. Close doors and windows to prevent spherical lightning from entering the room. 2. Try not to get close to metal parts such as doors, windows, stoves, and heating stoves, and do not stand barefoot on mud or cement ground. It is best to sit on wooden chairs with non-conductive objects under your feet. 3. Do not swim or row in the river to prevent lightning from hitting the human body through water. 4. When encountering thunderstorms in the wild, quickly find a low-lying area or ditch to squat down, and do not take shelter under isolated trees, tall towers, or power poles. 5. Once someone is struck by lightning, they should be rescued in a timely manner. The rescue method is the same as electric shock first aid, and artificial respiration and extracorporeal heart massage should be performed in a timely manner. At the same time, they should be rushed to the hospital. Dense fog. When a large number of small water droplets or ice crystal particles are suspended in the near lower atmosphere, making people's vision blurry, and the horizontal distance between the parties involved drops below 1,000 meters, it is called fog. Fog has different levels, and when the distance between them is less than 1,000 meters but more than 500 meters, it is called light fog. When the visible distance is less than 500 meters, it is called heavy fog. When the visible distance is less than 200 meters, it is called dense fog. Protective measures against fog disasters. 1. Try not to go out as much as possible. When it is necessary to go out, wear a mask to prevent inhaling toxic gases. 2. Try to move less in the fog and avoid exercising in the fog. 3. Pedestrians should be careful when crossing the road and see clearly the vehicles coming and going. 4. When driving vehicles and cars, slow down and follow the instructions of the traffic police. Do not rush to travel by car or boat. When a ferry is suspended, do not crowd at the ferry crossing. Natural disasters and epidemics. Natural disasters disrupt the ecological balance between humans and their living environment, creating conditions for infectious diseases to spread easily. Therefore, controlling infectious diseases has become an important component of disaster prevention work. After natural disasters, with the destruction of the old ecological balance and the establishment of a new balance, the changes in the epidemic conditions of infectious diseases caused by disaster conditions will still exist for a period of time. The post-effect of this disaster makes the control of infectious diseases under disaster conditions different from other disaster relief work, which is an important feature. After the direct consequences of natural disasters are basically eliminated, eliminating their after-effects will become the focus of work, and this work will actually become the main task of infectious disease control under disaster conditions. Characteristic 1 is that the distribution of disasters is widespread, with some areas severely affected. Secondly, there are obvious spring and summer floods in the south, and abnormally heavy floods in the north. Thirdly, typhoons frequently and densely make landfall, with a wide range of impacts. Fourthly, local wind and hail disasters are relatively severe, while drought disasters are significantly lighter. The fifth reason is that earthquakes occur frequently in the western region, and low-temperature snow disasters continue to hit the northern region. Sixth, poverty-stricken areas are prone to frequent and severe disasters, with significant overlapping effects of disasters and poverty. 3 things to do when reading. Read, collect, and reward. The impact of natural disasters, data. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Disaster impact for different types of natural disasters. Infectious disease control work also has different characteristics. In this sense, disasters can be classified as sudden disasters, including floods, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, typhoons, and other natural disasters that cause significant damage in a short period of time, gradual disasters, including droughts and famines caused by rare insect infestations. The latter type of disaster can be more organized in the prevention and control of infectious diseases, as it does not have a sudden impact on human basic living conditions. Epidemic mechanism. 1. The drinking water supply system has been disrupted. The vast majority of natural disasters can cause damage to the drinking water supply system, which will be the first and foremost issue after disasters occur, often leading to large-scale outbreaks and epidemics of intestinal infectious diseases in the early stages after disasters. During floods, previously safe drinking water sources are submerged, destroyed, or silted up, forcing people to use surface water as a source of drinking water. These waters are often contaminated by human and animal excrement, corpses, and debris from damaged buildings upstream, especially in low-lying waterlogged areas where disaster victims are trapped by floods for a long time, which has led to outbreaks of water-based diseases. During floods in Bangladesh, a large number of people died as a result. During earthquakes, damage to buildings can also affect the water supply system, disrupting the normal water supply for residents. This has a serious impact on urban residents, and due to pipeline damage, residual water sources are highly susceptible to pollution. Tsunamis and wind disasters can also cause this situation. During disasters, many drinking water sources are depleted, resulting in concentrated drinking water sources. In some water-scarce areas that are prone to disasters, residents often need to go far away to obtain drinking water. Once these water sources are contaminated, it will cause outbreaks of diseases. A severe outbreak of bacterial dysentery occurred in Batang, Sichuan due to drought. In some low-lying saline alkali areas, water and drought disasters can also cause changes in groundwater levels, thereby affecting the salt content and pH value of drinking water. When the pH value and salt content in water increase, it is beneficial for the proliferation of Vibrio cholerae. Therefore, in some cholera epidemic areas, the recurrence of cholera is often caused by water and drought disasters, which can be extended for a long time. 2. Food shortage. Although delivering food to disaster areas has become the first task of disaster relief, when large-scale and geographically extensive natural disasters occur, local food is still difficult to completely avoid. In addition, with the destruction of basic living conditions, people are forced to store food under harsh conditions, which can easily cause food mold and spoilage, leading to food poisoning and the spread of foodborne intestinal infectious diseases. Floods often accompany cloudy and rainy weather, during which the food is prone to mold. During a recent large-scale flood in several southern provinces of China, multiple incidents of mold poisoning occurred. When disasters occur during hot weather seasons, food spoilage and spoilage are highly likely to occur. Due to the ease of preservation of pickled food, during large-scale disasters when the supply of staple food is interrupted, pickled food often becomes the only staple food for residents, which also provides conditions for halophilic bacterial poisoning. Food shortage can also cause a general decline in people's physical fitness, making various diseases more prone to occur and spread. 3. Fuel shortage in large-scale natural disasters. Fuel shortages are also a common phenomenon, especially among flood victims. The shortage of fuel first forces disaster victims to drink raw water and eat raw and cold food, leading to the occurrence and spread of intestinal contamination diseases. When it is difficult to restore fuel supply in the short term after a serious natural disaster, fuel shortage may cause a decline in the personal hygiene level of residents. Especially in winter, the population is still in a crowded state, which may lead to the breeding and spread of surface parasites, leading to the resurgence of some infectious diseases that were already under control, such as epidemic rashes and typhoid fever. 4. Water pollution. Floods often cause pollution of water bodies, leading to large-scale outbreaks of waterborne infectious diseases such as schistosomiasis and leptospirosis. But the impact of floods on water pollution is twofold. In large-scale flood disasters, especially during travel, due to the dilution effect of floods, there is no significant increase in the incidence of such diseases. However, when floods begin to recede, many small water bodies are left in the waterlogged area. If these small water bodies are contaminated, it is highly likely to cause the outbreak and spread of such diseases. 5. Destruction of living conditions. Floods, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tsunamis can all cause large-scale damage to living conditions. In the initial stage, people are forced to camp and may then live in rudimentary shacks for a considerable amount of time, resulting in population concentration and overcrowding. During the Tangshan earthquake, in major cities such as Tangshan and Tianjin, simple shantytowns stretched for dozens of miles, with the longest living time lasting for more than a year. Even after relocating back to their original homes, due to a large number of houses being destroyed, some residents will still experience overcrowding for a long time. Camping makes people vulnerable to attacks from blood-sucking arthropods. At this stage, the incidence rate of insect-borne infectious diseases may increase, such as malaria, Japanese encephalitis, and epidemic hemorrhagic fever. The crowded living conditions of the population are conducive to the spread of diseases transmitted through close contact between people, such as hepatitis and red-eye disease. If this situation continues to winter, respiratory infectious diseases will become serious problems, such as influenza, epidemic cerebrospinal meningitis, etc. 6. Population migration. Natural disasters often cause large-scale population migration. During the Tangshan earthquake, the wounded were transported directly to Chengdu and Chongqing, located in the southwestern hinterland of China. During the urban reconstruction period, the population evacuated in the form of family and friends almost spread throughout the entire dynasty. Under current economic conditions, residents in disaster areas who go out and engage in labor activities have almost become the most important form of production self-rescue activities. The large-scale migration of population, first of all, created conditions for the spread of some local diseases, and made some diseases pandemic, such as the Black Death in the Middle Ages. The last pestis pandemic in the history of Yunnan in the Chinese dynasty began from population mobility. Population mobility has caused two problems. When the population in the disaster area flows out, it may spread local diseases to the affected areas. More importantly, as the disaster area begins to rebuild and the population gradually returns to their hometowns, local infectious diseases from various regions will be brought back to the disaster area. If the affected areas have the conditions for disease outbreaks, it is possible to create new endemic areas. The second major issue with the arrival of population mobility is that it interferes with the immune status of some populations who mainly rely on immunity to control diseases, resulting in local non-immune populations and creating conditions for the spread of these diseases. In China, planned immunization has been widely implemented, and the control of poliomyelitis and measles has achieved significant results. The incidence rate of typhoid fever, tuberculosis and hepatitis A and B has begun to decline. Due to the interference of disasters, it is difficult to carry out the planned immunization work normally, and the population flow makes some children miss vaccination, which may increase the incidence rate of such diseases. Some diseases that are prevalent in children and young people play an important role in the prevalence of diseases related to the natural immune status of the population. Whether it is the outflow of population from the disaster area or the return of population to their homes during the reconstruction of the disaster area, some non-immune populations will be exposed to a low level of natural epidemic population, which will lead to an increase in the incidence rate of these diseases. Media influence. Many infectious diseases are not just spread through people, there are other biological hosts besides humans. Some diseases must be transmitted through biological vectors. Disaster conditions have disrupted the old ecological balance between humans, host animals, biological vectors, and pathogens of diseases, and will establish new ecological balances on a new basis. Therefore, the impact of disasters on these diseases will be more long-lasting. 1. Flies. Flies are important carriers of intestinal infectious diseases, and their breeding and proliferation are mainly determined by the unsanitary conditions of human living environments. Major natural disasters always cause significant damage to the hygiene conditions of human living environments, and the breeding of flies is almost inevitable. After the earthquake, houses collapsed. The corpses of dead people and animals are buried under the ruins, along with a large amount of things and other organic matter. In warm climate conditions, these organic components will quickly decay, providing easy breeding conditions for flies. Therefore, earthquakes as severe as the Tangshan earthquake often result in an astonishing number of adult flies appearing in a very short period of time, posing a serious threat to the residents of the disaster area. After the flood recedes, a large amount of drowned animal carcasses and various organic waste will settle on the old village site. If not eliminated in time, it will also cause a large number of flies to breed. Even in drought situations, due to the lack of water, there may still be some unhygienic conditions that are conducive to the breeding of flies. Therefore, in the initial stage of post-disaster reconstruction, eliminating flies will be an important task in infectious disease control work. 2. Mosquitoes. Among the blood-sucking arthropods that transmit diseases, mosquitoes are the most important and closely related to disasters. Under common disaster conditions in our country, malaria and Japanese encephalitis pose the most serious threat to residents in disaster areas. The breeding of mosquitoes requires small stationary water bodies. Therefore, in major floods, the increase in mosquito density during flood discharge is often not significant. But after the water recedes, there are often a large number of small areas of waterlogged water in the low-lying areas, where weeds grow and become the best breeding ground for mosquitoes. At this time, if there is an infectious source, the incidence rate of the region will rise rapidly. Drought can cause some rivers to dry up and lakes to dry up, and the small puddles left in these rivers and lakes can also become good breeding grounds for mosquitoes. In disasters that cause significant damage to buildings, such as earthquakes and wind disasters, it is possible to simultaneously cause damage to water storage buildings and pipelines. The overflow of tap water, especially the retention of domestic sewage on the ground, can also become an environment for the large-scale breeding of mosquitoes. Disasters not only cause an increase in mosquito density, but also increase the chances of mosquitoes invading humans. Residents trapped by floods and forced to sleep outdoors due to house damage often lack effective means to resist mosquito invasion, which is also an important reason for the rise of incidence rate of mosquito-borne diseases. 3. Other blood-sucking arthropods. Under disaster conditions, the main manifestation is an increased chance of blood-sucking arthropods invading humans, and mosquitoes sometimes mechanically transmit rare infectious diseases such as anthrax. When humans sleep outdoors in areas with abundant wild grass and humus, they are susceptible to invasion by mites such as chigger mites and gamacid mites. In areas where chigger disease and epidemic hemorrhagic fever exist, this threat to humans increases significantly. Disasters that occur in forest areas, such as forest fires, force humans to live near shrubs, increasing the chance of tick bites and potentially leading to the spread of a range of diseases such as forest encephalitis, Lyme disease, and spotted fever. 4. Parasites. In China, the existing distribution of schistosomiasis is mostly in areas prone to flood disasters, while the distribution of snails is greatly affected by floods. In daily life, the distribution of snails constantly changes with the erosion of water flow and the formation of shallow shoals. Under flood conditions, it is possible to bring snails away from their original breeding areas and settle in new suitable environments. Therefore, flood disasters often significantly expand the distribution area of schistosomiasis. 5. Livestock. Livestock is an important host for many infectious diseases, such as pigs and dogs being hosts of leptospirosis, pigs and horses being hosts of Japanese encephalitis, and cattle being hosts of schistosomiasis. When flood disasters occur, a large number of victims and livestock are often trapped in their small areas by the floods. The natural return to the sea, which causes significant damage to houses, can also lead to abnormally close relationships between humans and livestock. This environment makes it easy for infectious diseases that are common between humans and animals to spread. 6. Domestic and wild rodents. Domestic and wild rodents are the most important disease hosts, and their distribution and density are significantly affected by natural disasters. Most rodents related to diseases live underground in burrows, and their swimming ability is not very strong. Therefore, when larger-scale floods occur, the number of rodents will decrease. However, some rodents may use floating debris to escape and concentrate in higher areas where disaster victims live, resulting in abnormally high density in local areas. Under these conditions, due to abnormally close contact between humans and rodents, it is possible to cause the spread of diseases. Due to the extremely strong reproductive ability of rodents, they often leave behind abundant food that can be used by rodents in villages and farmland destroyed by floods. Therefore, after the flood recedes, the density of rodents may rapidly increase, and in the following period, a very high population density may occur, which can promote the spread of diseases and endanger humans. Drought may cause some lake and swamp areas to dry up and become low-lying areas overgrown with weeds. This area provides a superior living environment for wild rodents, leading to a high increase in their numbers. There have been reports that this condition has caused an outbreak of hemorrhagic fever in the population. Earthquakes and other natural disasters have caused a large amount of house damage, and some houses that were previously difficult for rodents to invade have been damaged. A large amount of food has been left in the ruins, providing conditions for domestic rodents to breed in large numbers. When post-disaster reconstruction starts and residents move back to their original houses in succession, rodent disease may become a major problem, and the incidence rate of diseases transmitted by domestic rats may also rise. Development trends due to the impact of natural disasters on the pathogenesis of infectious diseases. The onset of infectious diseases may exhibit a phased characteristic after natural disasters. In the event of a sudden natural disaster, the first to be affected is the destruction of the sources of drinking water and food. Therefore, intestinal infectious diseases will be the main threat in the early stages. Especially water source pollution and food poisoning, which often accumulate a large population, should be the focus of early disease control after disasters. The destruction of houses has led to a large number of people living outdoors, making them vulnerable to the invasion of blood-sucking arthropods. But due to the invasion of arthropods. However, Due to the accumulation process of the number of arthropods and the number of infectious sources, the occurrence of infectious diseases is usually slightly later and may be a gradual process. The excessive concentration of the population has increased the incidence rate of infectious diseases through close contact. If the scale of the disaster is large, the population in the disaster area needs to live under quarantine conditions for a long time. When the cold season comes, the incidence rate of respiratory infectious diseases will also rise. Population migration may lead to two peaks of illness. The first peak is caused by population outflow, but due to the spread of patients in a wide range of non-disaster areas, this peak of incidence is often difficult to detect and cannot receive corresponding attention. When the reconstruction of the disaster area begins and the displaced population returns to their hometown, there will be a second peak of incidence, which is often characterized by the incidence rate among children. Finally, the post-disaster period is actually a process of ecological balance reconstruction, which may last for 2 or 3 years or even longer. During this period, infectious diseases shared by humans and animals, and infectious diseases transmitted through biological vectors, may show different characteristics from normal times, and may have a higher incidence rate. Prevention and control policies. Given the above-mentioned impact of natural disasters on the incidence of infectious diseases, the prevention and control of infectious diseases after natural disasters should have different characteristics from normal periods, and the organizational leadership of prevention and control should be relevant government departments. According to the characteristics of infectious diseases during disaster periods, infectious disease control work can be divided into 4 periods. 1. Pre-disaster stage. China is a large country, and some regions are prone to natural disasters. Therefore, before disasters occur, preparations should be made, including infectious disease prevention and control work. 1. Accumulation of basic information. To develop scientific prevention and control measures during disaster periods, attention should be paid to the accumulation of basic information in daily life, including population data, health data, infectious disease incidence data, distribution data of major endemic diseases, and distribution data of major animal hosts and vectors. 2. Development of infectious disease control plans. In some disaster-prone areas, such as earthquake-active areas, low-lying areas downstream of large rivers, and flood diversion areas, emergency response plans should be prepared during the disaster period, including infectious disease control plans. The plan should determine the key prevention measures for different periods based on the specific situation of each disaster-prone area. The configuration of mobile teams available for deployment to disaster areas, as well as the storage locations and deployment plans for urgently needed disease prevention materials and equipment, should also be considered in prevention. Due to the suddenness of natural disasters, it is not possible to develop contingency plans for every area that may be affected. Detailed contingency plans should be developed based on typical areas for demonstration purposes. 3. Mobile epidemic prevention team preparation. Due to the significant impact of natural disasters, there is often insufficient health, epidemic prevention, and medical resources in disaster areas to cope with emergencies that have already occurred. In the face of sudden disasters, existing epidemic prevention teams often fall into temporary chaos and paralysis. Therefore, when a major natural disaster occurs, it is necessary to dispatch mobile epidemic prevention teams to the disaster area to support disease control work. For some disaster-prone areas, the personnel of these mobile teams should be regularly trained to understand the hygiene and disease situation of the main mobile directions, as well as the possible problems encountered after entering the disaster area. When personnel change, the personnel of these mobile teams should also be supplemented and adjusted in a timely manner, so that they are always in a state of being able to cope with emergencies. 2. Disaster impact period. When a large-scale natural disaster suddenly strikes, it is actually impossible to carry out effective disease prevention and control work. However, during this period, medical teams sent to disaster areas for emergency rescue purposes should be equipped with sufficient amounts of drinking water for disinfection and drugs for preventing and treating intestinal infectious diseases. They should also pay attention to the signs of large-scale infectious diseases and make appropriate measures to control the initial outbreak of the disease. 3. Post-disaster period. When residents in disaster areas are out of danger and temporarily reside in a safe place, systematic disease prevention and control measures should be taken. 1. Rebuild the mass disease monitoring system. Due to the impact of major natural disasters, the heavy workload of disaster relief work, and the mobility of personnel, the disease monitoring and reporting systems established in daily life often become paralyzed in the early stages after disasters. Therefore, the first task that health management departments and mobile epidemic prevention teams need to carry out is to rectify them and establish a new epidemic reporting system based on the situation of disaster victims, so as to detect the epidemic in a timely manner and handle it correctly. The monitoring content should not only include the legally reported infectious diseases, but also the temporary residence and mobility of the population, the occurrence of major diseases, as well as the number of rodents and vectors in and near the temporary residence of residents. 2. Rebuild a safe drinking water system. Due to the most serious threat posed by the destruction of the water diversion system to the population, all possible measures should be taken to restore and ensure safe drinking water supply first. 3. Vigorously carry out health campaigns. Improving the hygiene conditions of temporary housing after disasters is an important step in reducing the occurrence of diseases. Therefore, when residents have basically escaped danger and arrived at a safe place, they should be organized to continuously improve the hygiene conditions of their residence, eliminate garbage and dirt, regularly spray insecticides to reduce the density of mosquitoes and flies, and if necessary, carry out rodent control work. When rebuilding after a disaster, the hygiene conditions of the original place of residence should also be improved first before moving back. 4. Prevent the invasion of blood-sucking insects. It is impossible to reduce the density of blood-sucking insects to a safe level when residents are forced to sleep outdoors. Therefore, the main means of preventing insect-borne diseases is to prevent insect bites. All possible methods can be used to protect the population from being bitten by blood-sucking insects such as mosquitoes. If plants with natural insect repellent effects are used to fumigate and repel mosquitoes, and materials such as mosquito nets and mosquito repellents should be brought into the disaster area as much as possible. 5. Timely detection and handling of infectious sources. Under the conditions of major natural disasters, phenomena such as overcrowding and mixed human and animal populations are often difficult to improve in the short term. Therefore, timely and correct isolation and treatment of patients are the basic means to reduce infectious diseases. There are some diseases that humans are the only source of infection, such as hepatitis, malaria, etc. Therefore, special attention should be paid among residents in disaster areas to promptly detect such patients and transfer them to medical units with isolation conditions for treatment. In addition, there are many diseases that can occur not only in humans, but also in animals as important sources of transmission for these diseases. Therefore, attention should be paid to inspecting domestic animals such as pigs, cows, horses, dogs, and other domestic animals in the disaster area, timely detecting the infection of leptospira, schistosomiasis, and Japanese encephalitis, and promptly handling animals that have become sources of infection. 6. Diagnose the outflow population. After a fire occurs, a large number of people will leave the disaster area in the form of engaging in labor activities or visiting relatives and friends. Therefore, in the surrounding areas of the disaster area, especially in large and medium-sized cities, special efforts should be made to strengthen the screening and diagnosis of populations from the disaster area, in order to timely detect signs of infectious diseases. In some areas with endemic diseases, immunization and prevention should also be carried out for these migrant populations to avoid outbreaks of certain local infectious diseases. 4. Post-effect period. When the affected population moves back to their original place of residence and begins reconstruction work, the prevention and control of infectious diseases after the disaster enters the stage of addressing the post-disaster effects. 1. Diagnose and immunize the returning population. At this stage, the population flowing out of the disaster area begins to gradually return to their hometowns, and the focus of infectious disease prevention and control work should shift to preventing a second peak of incidence among the returning population. Personnel engaged in labor work outside may enter some endemic areas and become infected there, which may bring the disease or its host and vector back to their hometowns. Therefore, it is necessary to strengthen the inspection and diagnosis among the returnees to find out which endemic areas they have visited, such as pestis, brucellosis, schistosomiasis, etc., and check these possible conditions. If patients are found, they should be treated immediately. Babies born in other places often lack immunity to common diseases in their hometowns, so it is necessary to strengthen the examination and diagnosis of infants and children in order to detect and treat their diseases in a timely manner. Because it is difficult to carry out the normal planned immunization work for the floating population, there will often be immunization gaps among these people. Therefore, timely supplementary immunization for the returning population is an important measure to prevent the increase of disease incidence rate. 2. Reconstruction of disaster areas and re-investigation of diseases. Natural disasters can often cause the expansion of contaminated areas of infectious diseases such as schistosomiasis, leptospirosis, and epidemic hemorrhagic fever that are common to animals, and lead to changes in the distribution and intensity of animal diseases. Therefore, during the post-disaster reconstruction period, the distribution of these diseases should be re-investigated and corresponding preventive measures should be taken to prevent their outbreak during the reconstruction process. For families and individuals in disaster areas, the following points should be noted. Pay attention to the cleanliness of drinking water. If conditions permit, follow the guidance of disaster relief personnel and strictly disinfect with medication. If conditions permit, boil the water as much as possible before drinking. Do not casually use contaminated water due to inconvenience. Cooperate with disaster relief personnel to carry out fly, mosquito, and rodent control work, and use all means to prevent mosquito bites. If any abnormal situation is found, such as illness, fever, or skin disease in the surrounding area, it should be reported immediately to the disaster relief personnel or relevant departments. Try to avoid multiple people living in the same room and avoid sleeping with animals as much as possible, even if it is your own poultry or livestock. If it is not necessary, do not relocate arbitrarily without the organization and guidance of relevant personnel. Outgoing personnel should not enter the disaster area recklessly due to concerns for the safety of family and friends. When the supply of tap water and other water is interrupted after a disaster, it is necessary to ensure the safety of drinking water by drinking groundwater, firefighting water, and other resident water. If the supply of tap water is interrupted after a disaster, priority should be given to drinking bottled water, or drinking water boiled at a designated location. 3 things to do when reading. Read, collect, and reward. World's Top 10 Disasters, Information. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Black Storm. Brief introduction. On the early morning of May 11, 1934, an unprecedented black storm occurred in the western grasslands of the United States. The strong wind blew for 3 days and 3 nights, forming a rapidly moving black storm belt that is 2,400 kilometers long from east to west, 1,440 kilometers wide from north to south, and 3,400 meters high. Where the storm passed, streams were cut off, wells dried up, fields cracked, crops withered, livestock died of thirst, and thousands of people were displaced. This storm is a type of strong sandstorm, commonly known as the black wind. It is a type of sandstorm where strong winds lift sand and form a sand wall, with almost zero visibility in the areas it passes through. It is a catastrophic weather phenomenon characterized by strong winds and a mixture of dense sand and dust. Strong winds are the driving force, and deserts with abundant sources of sand and dust are the material basis for forming black storms. Black storm. When a sandstorm occurs, the wind force is mostly 4.8 levels, and fine sand and dust near the ground are transported to an altitude of 15.30 meters. The horizontal visibility can be maintained at over a kilometer, and the rolled-up sand and dust materials are generally deposited on nearby obstacles or oasis edges, causing sand burial and sand-cutting hazards. There is also a dust storm phenomenon different from sandstorms. Strong winds above level 8 carry a large amount of dust and other fine particulate matter into the air, forming a tumultuous wind wall up to 500.3000 meters high. The dust carried by the storm rolls forward and can drift thousands or even 10,000 kilometers away at high altitudes. The combination of dust storms and sandstorms in desert and semi-desert areas is known as sandstorms, and black storms are extremely severe sandstorms. Introspection: this is a historic punishment imposed by nature on human civilization. Due to the continuous cultivation of land resources by developers and the continuous deforestation, soil erosion is severe, and continuous drought exacerbates the phenomenon of land desertification. Under the action of high-altitude airflow, dust particles and sand are rolled up, and dust streams rise into the air, forming a huge gray-black storm belt. The New York Times published a special report on the front page of that day. The attack of the black storm had a serious impact on the agricultural and animal husbandry production in the United States, causing large areas of wheat that had already suffered from drought to wither and die, resulting in fluctuations in the U.S. grain market at that time and impacting economic development. At the same time, the black storm ravaged the fertile soil surface all the way, exposing barren sandy soil layers and causing changes in the soil structure of the affected areas, severely restricting the future development of agricultural production in the disaster area. Every victory of humanity over nature requires a corresponding response from nature. After the Black Storm in North America, the former Soviet Union failed to learn from the United States, and history repeated itself twice. In March and April 1960, newly developed areas in the former Soviet Union were once again eroded by the Black Storm, and all the farms that had been in operation for many years were destroyed within a few days, with no harvest. Nature's revenge on humanity is merciless. 3 years later, another storm occurred in these newly developed areas, with a wider impact. The newly developed areas in Kazakhstan have been affected by disasters, covering an area of 20 million hectares. The occurrence of the Black Storm disasters in North America and the former Soviet Union revealed to the world that in order to avoid natural retaliation, humanity must act according to objective laws. That is to say, while humans are demanding from nature, they also need to consciously protect the human living environment, otherwise they will suffer consequences on their own. Avalanche: the Great Avalanche of 1970. The 1970 Peruvian avalanche was one of the 10 natural disasters of the 20th century. Peru is located in the western part of South America, with an endless coastline spanning over 3,000 kilometers. It is also a mountainous country, with mountainous areas accounting for half of the total area of the country. The famous Vasculan Peak in the Andes has a steep slope and steep cliffs. The mountain is covered in snow for years, and the white god of death often falls here. On May 31, 1970, a major avalanche occurred here, completely destroying the city of Rongjié at the foot of Mount Vasculan, resulting in the death of 20,000 residents and a disaster area of 23 square kilometers. Peru's Great Avalanche at 20.30 on May 31, 1970. The Vasculan Mountains in the Andes Mountains of Peru. At this time, in cold regions, many people have fallen asleep. Suddenly, a thunderous sound came from afar. Immediately, the earth lost control like a ship amidst waves, trembling wildly and violently. Immediately afterwards, a deafening sound came from afar. Deafening, awakening people from their slumber. Those who were studying, entertaining, and working at night were stunned by the sudden noise. People don't know what happened, and the houses collapse in a crooked and creaking manner. At this point, people realize that the disaster of the earthquake had already arrived. Those who have not yet escaped from the house are trapped among the collapsed bricks and gravel. Some have been smashed to death or knocked unconscious, while others are loudly calling for help and crying. People who have already run outdoors are also unable to stand steadily at this time. They were too preoccupied to rescue their relatives and friends who were trapped under the collapsed object. Outside, the cold wind was piercing and pitch black, and no one could see anyone except for the rumbling sound of collapse. Suddenly, another thunderous sound came from far to near, coming from the direction of Mount Vasculan. After a while, the mountains and the ground split, snowflakes flew, and a strong wind hit us. Originally, a massive avalanche triggered by an earthquake erupted. Earthquakes crack, loosen, and shatter the rocks on the mountain peaks, while seismic waves shatter the ice and snow on the mountain. In an instant, the ice, snow, and gravel were like huge waterfalls, pouring down against the cliffs and cliffs, collapsing almost 900 meters at a speed of free fall. The city of Rangjie, which had just been hit by an earthquake, was filled with fear and was swept away by the accompanying ice and snow dragons. Most people were crushed to death under the ice and snow, and the rapidly moving ice and snow dragons suffocated many people to death. At the foot of Mount Vasculan, there is a glacier snow basin. Here, thick ice and snow have accumulated. At this moment, under the fierce impact of the falling ice, snow, and gravel on the mountain peak, the thick ice and snow inside the snow bowl were shattered. Under the action of huge waves, the ice, snow, and dust in the basin rose into the air, as if a huge blizzard had occurred. Suddenly, snowflakes flew and splashed all over the sky. Mushroom-like snow clouds rose hundreds of meters high, with a great potential to cover the sky and the sun. The violent vibration caused the ice, snow, and rocks on the mountaintop to continuously collapse. Every time it collapses, a mushroom-shaped snow cloud rises. In the snow bowl, the first time the ice and snow collapsed, the accumulation was not yet stable, and the snow particles had not all fallen yet. They were then hit by the falling ice and snow again, causing dust to rise all over. The ice and snow debris that collapsed from the summit converged into a very large ice and snow body in the snow basin. The ice and snow inside the basin are accumulating more and more, becoming thicker and thicker. They begin to overflow at a great speed from the mouth of the snow bowl, forming a powerful flow of ice and snow. This powerful ice and snow flow, like a wild horse that has broken free from its reins, carries strong waves of air and sprays white smoke, roaring down. For most people, avalanches are only seen in movies or television. Perhaps you are still amazed by the grandeur of its spectacle. However, the current avalanche is more of an endless sadness and pain for Peruvians. This is the largest and most tragic avalanche disaster in the world so far. It evokes people's memories of an avalanche. The Great Avalanche of 1960. On January 10, 1960, a major avalanche also occurred on Mount Vasculan. Due to the arrival of spring, the earth warms up and the temperature rises, causing the snow to begin to melt. Melting water seeps down along the cracks, acting as a lubricant and weakening the cohesion between ice and snow and the mountain. In this situation, the snow on the mountain peak and the friction between the slopes decrease, causing large scale avalanches. Although the scale of that avalanche was not as large as this one, it was still quite astonishing. The ice and snow giant current travels at a speed of 140 km per hour, with a total avalanche volume of 5 million cubic meters. Destroyed 6 villages at the foot of the mountain. Due to the impact of that avalanche, the ground where the ice and snow flow past has become very smooth, and the shrubs and forest vegetation have lost their ability to block it as they did in the past, making this major avalanche even more invincible and unstoppable. At this moment, a powerful flow of ice and snow roaring out of the snow bowl rushed down at an extremely high speed, like a very huge ice and snow dragon, rushing frantically towards the foot of the mountain at a speed of 400 km per hour along the old path of the avalanche. Under the vibration and impact of powerful waves, known as avalanche winds, the accumulated snow along the way fell one after another, following the roaring roar, and the merged ice and snow dragon grew larger and larger. The rumbling sound, mixed with crackling and cracking sounds, spread throughout the open mountains and forests. Wherever the ice and snow flying dragon went, the rocks were shattered by the impact, the trees were either uprooted or broken, and the houses were washed to pieces. The place swept by the snowstorm left behind a desolate scene. Everywhere are toppling branches, broken roots, creeping shrubs, bare slopes with stripped vegetation, broken houses. The powerful air waves formed before the ice and snow dragon were caused by the violent vibration of the air caused by the high-speed movement of the ice and snow body. This kind of air wave formed by the giant flow of ice and snow has a very strong impact force, which can lift up rocks in the air along the way. A large stone weighing 3,000 kilograms was thrown 600 meters away. Its destructive power is much greater than that of the ice and snow body itself. It is precisely this powerful avalanche wave that has not only become the vanguard of the ice and snow body's journey, but also affected a large area of forest vegetation on both sides of the way, causing serious harm to places that the ice and snow dragon could not reach, with large forests, orchards, fields, and houses destroyed. This ice and snow giant current is moving at high speed in the old road, with a speed that is very shocking. Perhaps due to its high-speed movement, it changed its original way of moving forward and formed a rare jumping avalanche. A high-speed ice and snow flow, carrying strong waves, crossed a ridge under the Vasculan peak and swept recklessly towards the valley. Wherever it passes, the forest vegetation is completely destroyed, causing severe damage to another valley due to ice and snow flows. When the ice and snow dragon rushed along the old road to the end of the ice tongue, the collapsed snow had reached 30 million cubic meters, carrying millions of cubic meters of rock debris, forming a dragon head that reached nearly 100 meters high, continuing to roar towards the valley and town below the mountain. Along the way, rivers are cut off, roads are blocked, towns are destroyed, and farmland is flooded. At the foot of Mount Vasculan, there is a city called Rongjie. When an avalanche just occurred, Rongjie was being hit by the misfortune of an earthquake. People were busy rescuing their loved ones, and some were preparing to flee from dangerous places to avoid disaster. At this moment, a powerful wave of air hit the ground, pushing everyone to the ground. In an instant, a huge ice and snow dragon roared in, and most people were crushed to death under the ice and snow. The rapidly moving ice and snow dragon creates a strong air pressure that suffocates many people to death. At that time, someone recorded a very tragic situation. Some died with their mouths wide open and their eyes wide open, some curled up with their heads in their arms and died. A few who were not swallowed by the ice and snow also had difficulty breathing, gasping for breath with their mouths wide open. All the buildings in Rongjie city have been shaken by the earthquake, leaving only some broken walls and remnants. With the rapid arrival of the ice and snow dragon, powerful waves first cleared some lightweight items, broken doors and windows, bedboards and wooden frames from the ruins. The pillars and beams of the house were lifted into the valley, the door and window frames were lifted onto the rocks, the remaining roof was thrown into the distance, and the remaining broken walls were crushed by the oncoming ice and snow dragon, falling to the ground. After the ice and snow dragon swept through Rongjie city, it finally stopped in a nearby river valley. A huge ice and snow mass blocked a river, causing it to accumulate and forming a temporary reservoir. After a period of time, the temporary ice and snow dam formed by the ice and snow body began to melt, leading to the collapse of the ice and snow dam. The large amount of river water accumulated by the temporary reservoir surged down, causing a certain range of floods and flooding the farmland near Rongjie city. The ice and snow giant current formed by this major avalanche swept 14.5 kilometers of the road, affecting an area of 23 square kilometers. It completely destroyed the city of Rongjie at the foot of Mount Vasculan, resulting in the death of 20,000 residents and the destruction of most of the farmland and villages outside the city. As the saying goes, misfortune never comes alone. Earthquakes not only triggered major avalanches, but also triggered large-scale mudslides. After the earthquake, the gravel, soil, and ice and snow fragments on the mountain peak rushed down, and the high-speed sliding ice and snow debris in soil formed a debris flow, sweeping down from the mountain. Along the way, a large number of forests, plants, thorns, and shrubs were destroyed. Then, the mudslides rushed towards the towns of Yanay and Panlac in central Peru, burying a large number of houses, buildings, and people and livestock. Nearly 2/3 of the towns were destroyed, with a death toll of 20,000. Earthquakes, avalanches, and mudslides have caused heavy losses to Peruvians. According to post-disaster statistics from relevant departments, there were 12,000 deaths in earthquakes, over 20,000 deaths in avalanches caused by earthquakes, and approximately 20,000 deaths in mudslides caused by earthquakes. The total number of deaths reached 52,000, and the economic losses caused amounted to $507 million. Catastrophic floods. In July 1987, Bangladesh experienced the largest flood in history. In just 2 months, 47 of Bangladesh's 64 counties were hit by floods and rainstorm. The United Nations has launched 2 food supply plans, and the implementation of one plan alone costs $20 million annually. Bangladesh's catastrophic floods. In July 1987, Bangladesh experienced the largest flood in history. Days of rainstorm and gale raging, this sudden natural disaster made the unprepared residents at a loss. In just 2 months, 47 of Bangladesh's 64 counties were hit by floods and rainstorm, resulting in more than 2,000 deaths, 25,000 livestock drowned, more than 2 million tons of food were destroyed, 20,000 kilometers of roads and 772 bridges and culverts were washed away, tens of millions of houses collapsed, and large areas of agricultural products were damaged, affecting 20 million people. Bangladesh is located in the north of the Bay of Bengal, in the southeast of the Ganges River Plain, with the East Gauji Mountains in the west, the Arakan Mountains in the east and the Himalayas in the north. There are 230 rivers within the country, and the annual flooding causes huge losses to Bangladesh. In addition, this area is located in a monsoon zone, and the southwest monsoon blowing from the Indian Ocean carries warm and saturated water vapor rushing towards the low-pressure area. When obstructed by mountains, immediate rainfall occurs. This makes it difficult for flat and low-lying Bangladesh to escape the invasion of floods. The occurrence of floods has exacerbated the level of poverty among the people, and the United Nations has launched 2 food supply plans accordingly. The implementation of just one plan costs $20 million annually. This huge loss has yet to receive government attention. Nature has its inherent irresistible power, but through effective preventive measures, its degree of destruction can be minimized. In September 1987, Anis Isra Mahmood, Minister of Irrigation, Water Development and Flood Control of Bangladesh, said afterwards, "If we had reached an agreement with India and Nepal on effectively utilizing local water resources, such as increasing river water flow in winter and controlling floods during the rainy season, we could have reduced the severity of the floods that occurred here in July and August." If his words had been achieved earlier, millions of people would not have been homeless. Floods not only bring poverty and hunger to the people, but also breed a large number of bacteria. Various diseases are spreading in the disaster-stricken areas, with approximately 800,000 people contracting dysentery and nearly 100 deaths. This undoubtedly adds insult to injury to the lives of the people of Bangladesh. How to overcome the heavy disaster caused by floods and alleviate the crisis in this poor South Asian country has become a major challenge for the Bangladeshi government to solve, and has also attracted global attention. Indian Pestis. September 18, 1994, was the last day of the Indian Elephant God Festival. The streets of Surat, the industrial city of Gujarat, are bustling with activity. Thousands of men are singing and dancing on the streets, celebrating their traditional festivals. People are immersed in happiness, peaceful joy. But who knew that at this moment, a deadly epidemic had quietly descended upon them? The next day, the newly completed hospital in Surat received 30 patients with similar conditions. Their symptoms are persistent high fever, coughing, sneezing, vomiting blood, and fainting. Afterwards, another group of patients were sent to the hospital. On September 20, the first patient died in the hospital. Subsequently, many patients died one after another. From the external observation of these deceased individuals, their entire bodies turned black, with a pair of widened eyes protruding, and the pain was unbearable. At first, the doctor did not know that the patient was suffering from a terrible rat plague. It is no wonder that they have, because since the last pestis pandemic in India in 1966, this plague has almost disappeared, and many doctors have never encountered this disease. Indian pestis pandemic at this time, some people suspected that it was caused by bad people poisoning the drinking water source, and the municipal authorities ordered to cut off the supply of tap water and investigate the condition of the water source. Later, someone said that pestis was prevalent in Later near Maharashtra. The doctor immediately tested the blood sample, and the results showed that these patients were suffering from this disease. Only then did they realize that a disaster had arrived. The medical conditions in Surat are very poor, the medical equipment is very backward, the medical force is seriously insufficient, and there are very few drugs for curing diseases, especially tetracycline, sulfonamide and other drugs needed to cure pestis. As of October 4, more than 1,000 people have been sent to hospitals for treatment and examination, of which 50 have died of illness. At this time, Surat seems to be facing a cruel war and is in a state of emergency. The news of the pestis epidemic spread like wildfire. Not long after, it spread throughout the entire city of Surat. For a moment, crowds of people rushed to buy drugs, and a long queue formed at the entrance of the drugstore. This terrible disease causes the residents of Surat to be as frightened and restless as ants on a hot pot day and night. In order to avoid this disaster, they supported the elderly and children, using all available means of transportation, and hastily fled the city ravaged by the epidemic. Around train and bus stations, thousands of refugees are crowded every day. The city police chief exclaimed, "Even if there are thousands of police officers, they cannot stop the flow of cars and people fleeing in all directions." In just a few days, in Surat city, which has only a population of 2,300,000 people were in a state of panic and fled in a hurry. The citizens who stayed in the city were also anxious. Public service places such as shops, markets, and cinemas are closed, many factories are closed, schools are closed, and parents are not allowed for children to go out. During the day, people who go out wear masks. Those without masks cover their mouths and noses with handkerchiefs, scarves, etc., thinking that this can help them avoid disasters. At night, people dare not go out, and there is no one in the sky above the street, a deathly silence. At this time, Surat city was like a terrifying ghost city. 300,000 Surat citizens fled to India in all directions, and also brought pestis germs and fear to all parts of the country. In less than 2 weeks, this terrible plague has spread to 7 states of India and the administrative region of New Delhi. Gujarat, where Surat is located, is the most prevalent area of pestis, with the largest number of infected and dead people. The city of Mumbai, adjacent to Surat, was the first target of refugee escape, with 2,105 people infected in the state of Maharashtra where the city is located. In the capital New Delhi, 770 people were sent to hospitals for treatment and examination, 36 were diagnosed with pestis, and 4 died without treatment. In addition, the number of patients in Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and West Bengal is also increasing. The devil's claw of pestis also touched remote Jammu and Kashmir. According to official statistics, within 2 weeks, as many as 4,780 patients across the country went to hospitals for examination or treatment, with almost daily news of deaths. In places like New Delhi, infectious disease hospitals are already overcrowded, and authorities have had to set up temporary isolation wards in regular hospitals. Both infectious disease hospitals and temporary isolation wards have extremely poor medical conditions. In a dark ward, dozens of patients were crowded. The doors and windows of the ward were open, mosquitoes and flies were flying, and the media that spread the pestis. Mice, playing on the ground, on the windowsill, on the roof. Was not a place to treat diseases. Many patients escaped from the ward because they couldn't tolerate such harsh conditions. The Weixing department had to organize a special police team to track down these patients everywhere to prevent them from spreading the virus. The sudden arrival of the pestis was like a bolt from the blue to the unprepared Indian authorities. There are too many patients, and the hospital cannot resist them, calling for help one after another. The supply of drugs is in short supply, and many pharmacies are unable to produce drugs for treating diseases. Extremely frightened citizens rushed to purchase vaccines and antibiotics, and even if there were drugs available, a few places were quickly sold out. So, the Indian authorities had to request support from the World Health Organization and other countries to address the urgent situation. However, what is more frightening is the panic and hysteria caused by the fear of pestis. The 300,000 Surat citizens who fled thought that they could escape from this demon-controlled city safely and unharmed. Unexpectedly, wherever they went, they were not welcomed. In desperation, I had to return to my hometown. This large-scale escape will spread panic and pestis to all parts of India. Many cities, such as New Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, etc., are plunged into a state of panic and chaos. The prevalence of pestis caused people's extreme panic. This fear quickly spread to various parts of the world like a raging fire. Many countries have suspended various exchanges with India. For India, the economic losses are difficult to estimate. According to relevant statistics, the cost of treating and preventing pestis is up to tens of billions of dollars. Reason people can't help asking why the pestis, which has disappeared for many years, is once again widespread in India. Experts agree that the outbreak of pestis is caused by extremely dirty environment. It is said that Surat is the dirtiest city in India, with slums, markets, streets and alleys, piles of garbage, and a foul odor. During the pestis epidemic, 1,400 tons of garbage were cleared every day. The garbage everywhere has become a breeding ground for mice. Lake bottom toxic gas. The Pamita Plateau is a beautiful and intoxicating place. On the evening of August 21, 1986, people were sleeping soundly when suddenly a loud bang broke through the sky. Many people were deprived of their precious lives before they could fully understand what had happened. Cameroon lake bottom poison gas. This evening, a volcanic lake called Nyos Volcano Lake, located in the northwest of Cameroon, Africa, 400 kilometers from the capital Yaoundé, suddenly erupted from the bottom of the lake, emitting a large amount of toxic gas. It was like a flood, pouring down the north slope of the mountain and attacking several villages in the low valley area. The next morning, on the beautiful slopes of the Cameroon Plateau, the crystal blue Nyos River suddenly turned blood red, like a decaying and angry red eye. Dead livestock and wild beasts lay everywhere in the grass. In the village by Lake Nyos, the houses, church, and animal sheds are intact, but no one walks on the streets. Entering the room to explore, a shocking scene came into view, where there were all dead people. What a pitiful sight this is! The deceased included men, women, children, and even infants. From the mouths of the survivors, people learned about the events of the tragedy. Accompanied by the sound of last night's flight, a ghostly cylindrical vapor erupted from the lake, causing the entire water to boil. The rising waves hit the shore of the lake, reaching over 80 meters high and then pouring into the valley below like a pillar of smoke. At this moment, a strong wind howled from the lake, carrying a suffocating stench and pushing the smoke towards the neighboring towns. According to incomplete statistics, at least 1,740 people were killed by gas and a large number of livestock died in this disaster. Out of the 650 residents in the village, only 6 survived. This poisoning incident immediately attracted great attention from various countries. The Nyos volcano lake is also more famous around the world as a result. Japan, the United Kingdom, the United States, France, Italy and other countries quickly dispatched emergency rescue teams and sent experts to test the composition of the toxic gas emitted from Lake Nyos, and determine who the killer was. Experts are working hard to find answers. After a period of hard work, the composition of toxic gases emitted from Lake Nyos has finally been identified. Experts unanimously agree that the emitted gas mainly consists of carbon dioxide, while the foul odor comes from hydrogen sulfide. While conquering and demanding from nature, people also face ruthless retaliation from nature. The sudden natural disaster caused by the toxic gas at the bottom of the lake has tasted the bitter fruit for humanity. Due to years of sedimentation, the bottom of the lake is filled with carbon dioxide, which kills people. For a disaster in December 1952, traffic in London was almost paralyzed, and on the foggy fourth day, a double-decker bus could only slowly travel through the city with the help of fog lights. In 1952, police in London used burning torches in order to see others clearly in the smoke and be seen by others. For a disaster, London, known as the fog capital of the world, is often shrouded in thick fog at the turn of spring and autumn, as if shrouded in a mysterious veil. According to statistics, foggy weather in London can occur up to 80 times a year, with an average of one foggy day in 5 days. Whenever heavy fog falls, it not only affects traffic and causes accidents, but also directly endangers people's health and even threatens their lives. Compared to the situation in 1952, London today is a purified city. At that time, there were coal-fired power plants in London, and there were many factories not far from the city centre. Most homes use burning coal for heating. Steam locomotives powered by coal pull trains into the capital. There are almost no control measures for the exhaust gases generated by cars and trucks. On December 4, 1952, the City of London experienced the world's most severe smoke event. A continuous thick fog remained for almost a week, and a large amount of smoke, dust, and gas emitted by factories and residents accumulated in low altitude. The entire city was shrouded in thick fog and plunged into a grey darkness. During this period, more than 4,700 people died due to respiratory diseases. After the fog dispersed, more than 8,000 people died tragically. This is the shocking fog disaster that shocked the world. Big smoke. On the morning of December 3, 1952, the London Observatory reported that a gas peak passed through at night, with temperatures reaching 5.6 degrees Celsius and relative humidity of about 70% at noon. For the local community, this is a rare and wonderful day. A lovely winter day. On this day, a gust of wind blew from the North Sea across England, blowing thick mist from the chimneys of factories and urban residents in central England into the sky, making the air very fresh and pleasant. However, no one would have thought that disaster was quietly approaching. In the evening, London was on the southeastern edge of a massive high-pressure cyclone, with stronger north winds blowing clockwise around the anticyclone. The center of this cyclone has reached several hundred kilometers west of London and is moving southeast along its usual path. In the morning, the wind speed decreased and the clouds almost covered the entire sky. By noon, dark clouds had completely covered the sun, and the sky over London was shrouded in haze. The temperature reading on the meteorological station's thermometer was 3.3 degrees Celsius, and the relative humidity had risen to 82%. On December 5, an abnormal situation occurred. The anemometer at the London Observatory has measured a very strange measurement. The wind speed reading is completely stationary. According to experts at the time, the wind speed did not exceed 3 km per hour. London is in a state of dead wind, with a large accumulation of smoke and dust in the air that persists for a long time. The wind is too weak to carry away the various harmful smoke and dust emitted by the towering factory chimneys and households. So, a large amount of coal smoke drifted down from the air, and the beautiful Thames Valley was shrouded in smoke. A little apprentice working on a ship, the invasion of smoke made him burst into tears. Smoke penetrated through the door and entered the homes of residents in Greenwich, causing unbearable pain. Mist clouds suspended over the city for 5 days, gradually becoming dirtier and more toxic. The amount of smoke in the air of central London has increased almost tenfold. Smoke has caused thousands of victims to suffer from bronchitis, asthma, and other lung diseases. Finally, when the smoke dissipated, it was estimated that 4,000 people had died, most of whom were elderly. Today, the main cause of smoke is the pollution of exhaust gases emitted by motor vehicles. In big cities like Los Angeles and Mexico City, smoke remains suspended in the air. The use of lead-free gasoline and the installation of locomotive exhaust catalytic converters can help reduce the risk of health damage caused by such pollution. However, this is still a serious issue that needs to be addressed. Mysterious disaster on October 21, 1971, a transport plane named Super Constellation, carrying frozen beef flew over a detection ship working on the sea. The crew watched it fly for about a minute before suddenly, the plane crashed into the sea as if it had been sucked in by seawater. In the future, the crew saw nothing, neither oil stains nor corpses or airplane wreckage. The only thing that can confirm the disappearance of the plane is a large piece of bloody beef floating on the sea surface. Bermuda Triangle. The disappearance of the Super Constellation aircraft is just one of many missing events in this mysterious sea area. According to statistics, from 1840 to 1945, more than 100 planes went missing over this sea area, and there are more ships disappearing here. This place, known as the Sea Cemetery by the world, is the Bermuda Triangle that has attracted the attention of many scientists around the world. The disappearance of the Super Constellation, like countless other missing events, can be summed up in one sentence. No clues. Any ship, aircraft, or person who goes missing in the Bermuda Triangle is unlikely to find any survivors or wreckage. The mystery lies here. All those attempting to provide a logical explanation for the disappearance in the Bermuda Triangle have encountered unavoidable contradictions. So some people proposed the supernatural theory, attempting to unravel the mysteries of this century. Some researchers have linked the disasters that occurred in the Bermuda Triangle to aliens and UFOs for inference. Their argument is that there exists an alien underwater UFO base here. Because over the years, countless unidentified flying objects have been observed here. These missing planes and ships were taken away by the crew of the UFO. At a scientific conference held in Bonn, renowned astronomer Dr. Jacques Stubben revealed their use of space-age technology in conjunction with ancient records for research. He believes that the truth about the disappearance of planes and ships in the Bermuda Triangle has been revealed, and it is a meteorite from 400 years ago that is causing trouble. The above explanations are difficult to explain the root cause of the disappearance disaster in the Bermuda Triangle. However, despite this, people still have 100 times more confidence. With the rapid development of world science and technology, the devil that roams in the waters and airspace of the Bermuda Triangle will eventually be exposed and shown to the public. Big Bang. On June 30, 1908, on the banks of the Tungus River in the Siberian forest of the Russian Empire, a loud noise suddenly erupted. A huge mushroom cloud rose into the air, and a strong white light appeared in the sky. The temperature instantly scorched people, and the vegetation in the center of the explosion was charred. People 70 kilometers away were also severely burned, and some were deafened by the loud noise. Not only are nearby residents in great fear, but it also involves other countries. Many electric lights in London, UK suddenly went out, creating darkness. People in many European countries see daylight like flashes in the night sky. Even in the United States, far across the ocean, people feel the earth shaking. Tungus Big Bang simulation image. The specific time of occurrence is 7:17 a.m. Located at 60 degrees 53 minutes 9 seconds north latitude and 101 degrees 53 minutes 40 seconds east longitude, near the Tungus River, now part of the Evenki Autonomous Region of the Russian Federation. Destructive power. According to later estimates, it is equivalent to 15.20 million tons of TNT explosives and caused over 60 million trees to fall within an area of 2,150 square kilometers. Around 7:15 a.m. local time, locals in the northwest of Lake Baikal observed a huge fireball sweeping across the sky, with a brightness similar to that of the sun. A few minutes later, a strong light illuminated the entire sky and the phenomenon of mushroom clouds was observed. This explosion was recorded by seismic stations spanning the Eurasian continent, and the unstable pressure it caused was even detected by the newly invented pressure automatic recorder in Britain at the time. In the United States, the Smithsonian Observatory for Astrophysics and the Mount Wilson Observatory have observed a decrease in atmospheric transparency for only a few months. If this object collides with the Earth a few hours later, then the explosion should have occurred in Europe, not in the sparsely populated Tungus region, causing greater casualties. At that time, the Tsarist rule in Russia was in turmoil and unable to organize an investigation into it. People generally refer to this explosion as the Tungusian explosion. After the October Revolution, the Soviet regime sent physicist Kulik to lead an inspection team to investigate the Tungus region in 1921. They claimed that the explosion was caused by a massive meteorite. But they never found the deep crater where the meteorite fell, nor did they find the meteorite. Only dozens of flat-bottomed shallow pits were found. Therefore, the meteorite theory was only a speculation at the time, lacking evidence. Kulik led his team twice to Tungus for investigation and conducted aerial surveys, discovering that the damage caused by the explosion covered an area of over 20,000 square kilometers. At the same time, people also discovered many strange phenomena, such as not all the trees in the explosion center falling down, only the leaves being burnt. The growth rate of trees in explosive areas is accelerating. The width of its annual ring has increased from 0.4.2 mm to over 5 mm. The reindeer in the explosion area have all suffered from a strange skin disease, such as leprosy. Shortly after the outbreak of World War II, Kulik joined the military and sacrificed his precious life in the anti-fascist war. The Soviet Union's investigation into the Tungus explosion was also forced to be suspended. After World War II, former Soviet physicist Kasayev visited Japan. In December 1945, he arrived in Hiroshima, where the United States dropped an atomic bomb 4 months ago. Looking at the ruins of Hiroshima, Kasayev suddenly remembered Tungus, who clearly had many similarities between the two. The explosion center was damaged, and the trees stood upright without falling. The death of humans and animals in the explosion was caused by nuclear radiation burns. The mushroom cloud generated by the explosion has the same shape, but Tungus is much larger. Especially the photos of withered trees and charred branches captured in Tungus look very similar to the situation on Hiroshima. Therefore, Kasayev had a bold idea. He believes that the Tungus explosion was a nuclear explosion caused by a malfunction during the landing process of a nuclear-powered spacecraft piloted by aliens. This theory immediately sparked a strong reaction in the scientific community of the former Soviet Union. Supporters and opponents are not lacking. Saratov and others further speculate that the spacecraft came to this area to obtain fresh water from Lake Baikal. Some people have pointed out that the skin disease of reindeer in the Tungus region is very similar to the skin disease caused by radiation in the local cattle herd after a nuclear test conducted by the United States in New Mexico in 1945. The growth of trees in the Tungus region is accelerating, and there are genetic variations in plants and insects, which are also similar to the situation after the United States conducted a nuclear test on Pacific Islands. 5. In the 1960s, the Front Court sent multiple inspection teams to the Tungus area for investigation. Those who believed it was a nuclear explosion and those who insisted on the meteorite theory, claimed that the investigation found evidence favorable to themselves, and neither side could convince the other. For cases where a central crater has not been found, some people believe that the falling object is a comet, which can only produce a dust explosion and cannot cause a central crater. In 1973, some American scientists proposed new insights into this, believing that explosions were caused by cosmic black holes. When a small black hole ran over the Pacific Ocean between Iceland and Newfoundland, it triggered this explosion. However, little is known about the properties and characteristics of black holes. The existence of small black holes is still questionable. Therefore, this insight also lacks sufficient evidence. Until today, the mystery of the Tungus Big Bang remains unresolved. Tsunami. It is said that there is an interesting story circulating in Chile. God created the world, and when he finished creating it, he still had the last precious piece of mud in his hand. He was reluctant to throw it away, so he casually wiped this mud from south to north in the western part of South America, forming Chile, which is 4,270 kilometers long from north to south and 90.435 kilometers wide from east to west, with a narrow and long terrain. Perhaps, just because it is the last piece of mud, the crust here is not so peaceful. Chilean tsunami. However, according to modern plate structure theory, Chile is a subduction zone where the Pacific plate collides with the South American plate, located on the Pacific Rim volcanic activity zone. This special geological structure has caused Chile to be located on an extremely unstable surface. Since ancient times, volcanoes have been continuously erupting here, earthquakes have occurred repeatedly, tsunamis have occurred frequently, and disasters often occur. In May 1960, misfortune once again enveloped this troubled country. Starting from the early morning, a rare strong earthquake in the history of world earthquakes suddenly occurred on the seabed near Port Monte in Chile. The high magnitude, long duration, and wide coverage of the earthquake are rare. The major earthquake has been ongoing, with 225 earthquakes of different magnitudes occurring over a month before and after. There have been as many as 10 earthquakes with magnitudes of 7 or above, with 3 of them having magnitudes greater than 8. When the earthquake first occurred, the vibration was still relatively mild, and the earth was only trembling gently. But unlike previous earthquakes, this kind of tremor occurs continuously. Then, the magnitude of the earthquake increased one by one, and the vibrations became more and more severe. Then, the earth trembled more and more violently, like a light boat swaying in the wind and waves. In a panic, people stumbled and ran out of the room, taking refuge in a place they thought was safe. At this time, although there were also some less sturdy houses and buildings that were occasionally collapsed, cracked, and tilted, and occasional panicked crowds were crushed and injured by collapsed objects, some relatively sturdy houses and buildings were still unharmed. Due to the fact that the earthquake did not start as aggressively and people still had time to avoid it, the number of casualties was not high. However, the continuous earthquake for 2 consecutive days has caused people to feel numb and indifferent. Due to the long duration and minimal damage caused by earthquakes, people are not as afraid of earthquakes as they were at the beginning, but instead feel that there is nothing to be afraid of. Some even move into houses that have been shattered by the earthquake. Of course, there are also quite a few who still have lingering palpitations. They were afraid of a bigger earthquake and fled their homes to the safe zones of squares, docks, and beaches. As expected by some, at 7:11 p.m. on May 22, there was suddenly a deafening roar. The seismic waves roared in like thousands of tank convoys, and hundreds of planes swept through the air, roaring from the seabed of Port Monte. Soon, the earth began to tremble violently. After a while, cracks suddenly appeared on the land. After a while, some of the land suddenly rose again, as if a giant was flipping over. In an instant, the ocean was tumbling fiercely, the canyon was howling fiercely, the waves were roaring fiercely, the coastal rocks were crumbling, and the beach was filled with rubble. This earthquake is the highest and strongest in the world, with a magnitude of 9.5 and an intensity of 11 degrees. The impact area is within an 800-kilometer-long ellipse. After the major earthquake, a tsunami followed one after another. The tsunami wave swept across the Pacific coast at a speed of several hundred kilometers per hour, destroying cities such as Concepcion, Talcahuano, and Chilean cities in Chile, leaving over 2 million people homeless. 3 things to do when reading. Read, collect, and reward. Original Chapter 20. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What animal is best to breed? The vast majority of the area of rock shelters nowadays has been utilized. There is only one 100 square meter space left. Even if we want to build animal farms, we can't raise much, and there are also many restrictions. Firstly, the body size should not be too large. Cattle, sheep, pigs, and the like can basically be ruled out. They not only have a long growth cycle, but also have a large appetite, making it completely uneconomical to raise them in the global disaster environment. Secondly, it is important to consider whether one can provide subsequent rations. After all, my rock shelter can only produce wheat, sweet potatoes, and cabbage for the time being. It is possible to purchase and keep the feed for the first 3 to 4 months, but once the feed is consumed, there is no other way to feed these small animals and complete the species cycle. When the time comes, after raising it for 4 months, it will become extinct. It's better not to raise it. There are quite a few small animals that are suitable for breeding. Chicken, duck, fish, bamboo mouse, rabbit, snake, quail bird. Fish feed cannot be provided and a fish tank needs to be built, so it will be temporarily ruled out. Zhao Chen listed over a dozen small animals suitable for breeding. Then, based on their lifestyle habits and the value they can create, they are constantly being edited. I only have a total area of 100 square meters, so it is naturally impossible to raise so many animals. I can only choose 3 most suitable shelters, and I also need to be able to accept them. Like bread worms, earthworms, and so on. It's also a good grain, rich in protein. However, unless he is extremely hungry, Zhao Chen does not want to eat these insects. The first farmed animal. Meat rabbits. Through modern cultivation, large meat rabbits can grow to over 10 pounds. Moreover, the lean meat rate is as high as 70%, even known as beauty food, and the demand in the Sichuan region is extremely high. When Zhao Chen thought of the taste of a wild rabbit, he couldn't help but want to drool. That was the result of the rhubarb hunting back then. Although the taste of domestic rabbits may not be as good as that of pure natural rabbits, the various delicious methods are definitely enough to make one's own unique way of eating for a long time. Not only that. Compared to pork, meat rabbits also have many advantages. Firstly, rabbits contain a certain amount of lecithin, which can be consumed in moderation to enhance brain health, intelligence, and memory. Secondly, consuming rabbits can protect the skin's activity, make the skin elastic and shiny, and also protect the blood vessel walls to prevent arteriosclerosis. Thirdly, rabbits contain a small amount of fat and cholesterol, which can have a strong and healthy effect, but there is no need to worry about gaining weight. Fourthly, rabbits contain a certain amount of vitamins and amino acids that the human body needs, which can supplement nutrients. Not only that, but also a meat rabbit born through introduction, improvement, and closed breeding. Has extremely strong adaptability, terrifying reproductive ability, fast growth and development, high slaughter rate, tender meat, delicious flavor, and rich nutrition. At 4 months maturity, one can give birth to 7 or 8 offspring at a time. Not only that, after slaughtering the meat rabbits, their fur can also be used to weave sweaters, increasing their cold resistance. Because of these benefits, Zhao Chen designated the meat rabbit as his first meat food for refuge. As for the rations for meat rabbits, just take some cabbage and feed it with the roots, stems, and leaves of wheat. Anyway, the roots, stems, and leaves of wheat cannot be eaten by oneself, and the yield of cabbage has exceeded the limit. Instead of being stored in a material storage warehouse and rotting, it is better to use it to feed meat rabbits and allow them to eat fresh meat. The second farmed animal. Chicken. The third farmed animal. Duck. These 2 animals can also eat cabbage or wheat husks. Moreover, they can also lay eggs and duck eggs, providing not only meat but also eggs, and are also fully functional. 20 meat rabbits. 4 meat ducks. 4 white feathered chickens. Half male and half female, plus 4 months of feed. It is estimated that 10,000 yuan is more than enough. I still have 540,000 left. As for the problem of breeding too quickly and not enough feed. This is naturally simple, no matter how fast it reproduces, can it be eaten as fast as Zhao Chen? Eating one at a meal and controlling the quantity is easy. P.S. New book upload, seeking a wave of flowers, tips, monthly passes, and review tickets. 3 things to do when reading. Read, collect, and reward. Chapter 1. Awakening of the Shelter System. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sir, this is the air raid shelter you rented. Hangzhou City, suburbs. In front of an abandoned air raid shelter, a middle-aged man in a black suit respectfully took out a temporary land deed and handed it to the young man in front of him. An air raid shelter is a hole dug to prevent enemy airstrikes and reduce damage. Functional items that are currently in use cannot be traded. However, air raid shelters like this, which have been abandoned for many years and have nothing inside, can be temporarily rented and sold out. Due to being located in the suburbs, the price is generally not too expensive. Okay, thank you. Taking over the temporary land deed, Zhao Chen nodded. As a post-apocalyptic rebirth, he knows that in a month, the country will announce news of a global disaster. Subsequently, the whole world became turbulent. Money has turned into waste paper. Grain, water, and daily necessities have all become the most important things, being seized by countless people. Except for the Dragon Kingdom, which can maintain basic order, most other countries are in a state of madness, with only a few people able to remain calm. Parade and demonstration. Burning, killing, looting. Happy shooting every day. This is the main melody of other countries. In the following month, the Dragon Kingdom built a large number of shelters, continuously reserving strategic resources, and ultimately could only accommodate half of the population. The rest of the elderly, weak, sick, and disabled could only be reluctantly abandoned. The next decade will be the darkest era of human civilization. Meteorite fall, soaring radiation, ice age, terror rat disaster, infinite typhoon, extreme heat, volcano eruption. Various major disasters continue to ravage, and humanity can only rely on various reserve materials to barely survive. Even in a national shelter, Zhao Chen eventually became a victim of a volcanic eruption. Now, I am living a new life. 2 months before the Great Cataclysm, we naturally cannot repeat the same mistakes. Sir, with all due respect, why do you have to spend so much money to rent an abandoned air raid shelter in the suburbs? I also want to experience the underground residential life in the suburbs. Put away the temporary land deed, Zhao Chen said. As an online writer, I accumulated 5 million yuan of funds at the age of 20. I originally planned to buy a house in Hangzhou and settle down from then on. Unfortunately, a catastrophic event is imminent. Houses and money will become waste. If not spent early to purchase various survival supplies, they will immediately become worthless. In order to build a qualified shelter, the first step is to have a base area with sufficient defense capabilities. Air raid shelter. It's the best choice. The lease is for a period of 10 years, with a total price of 10 million yuan. Zhao Chen paid a deposit of 30%, 3 million, in advance, and as for the remaining money, he felt embarrassed as he had no intention of paying it. If it weren't for a minimum lease period of 10 years, he would probably rent for a maximum of 2 months. In the case of limited funds, one must make full use of every dollar. White prostitution is the best choice. I see, but this air raid shelter has nothing. If you want to build an underground residence, I may be able to provide some help. Whether it's furniture, water and electricity, or decoration, I can help you contact the manufacturer and negotiate the most favorable price. The middle-aged man hesitated for a moment and said, 10 million yuan is enough to buy a small villa. However, the young man in front of him used to rent an abandoned air raid shelter for 10 years, making it difficult to understand the world of the wealthy. However, this does not prevent him from expanding his network. One more friend, one more path. Using one's own resources to make friends with big shots can also be considered a path to promotion. Zhao Chen frowned and said, "Thank you very much." To turn an abandoned air raid shelter into a copper-walled and iron-walled shelter, it naturally requires a lot of resources. He was still considering what to do. I didn't expect someone to help solve the problem so quickly. This is my business card. If you need it, please call the number above. Okay, I'll need to trouble you more then. Leaving his business card, the middle-aged man drove away from here. It's about 30 minutes from here to the city center, not very far or very close. Zhao Chen carried a backpack, which contained some compressed biscuits, canned meat, and mineral water, which were the most basic resources for survival. There are also laptops, mobile phones, flashlights, lighters, large power banks, and a lightweight axe. Starting from today, I will be living here for a long time. Within the limited 2 months, we made every effort to build a shelter. Rhubarb, stop playing outside and come back quickly. Woo, woof, woof. A brown Chinese pastoral dog ran over with vigorous strides. On Zhao Chen's legs and feet, he rubbed affectionately, appearing very dependent. It is only 1 year old and is in its strongest stage. In the apocalypse of the Great Cataclysm, Zhao Chen dare not believe in humans at will, otherwise there is a high possibility that there will be no leftover food left. Only the dog is the most loyal servant, and it will use its life to protect its master. The yellow dog that once accompanied Emperor Qin Shi Huang in hunting. Accompanied by thousands of years of agricultural civilization passed down from generation to generation, they are intelligent, sensible, and human. Skilled in guarding homes and courtyards, helping with fishing and hunting, able to eat any kind of food, can be said to be an all-around family dog. Ding, the host already has a base, the shelter system is awakening personal shelter holder. Zhao Chen, space. 8,000 cubic meters, survival point. 0. P.S. New book upload, please greatly support all readers. In terms of updates, starting from Thursday every day. 3,000 more flowers, 1 more. 1,000 more evaluation tickets, 1 more. 20 more monthly tickets, 1 more. Increase the number of rewards by 5, 1 more. If everyone is happy to watch, please vote for some free flowers, monthly tickets, and evaluation tickets. This is the motivation for the author's early efforts to update. Fei Lu's novel, Fei Wants You to Look Good. Chapter 2. Survival Point. Pet Enhancement Potion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Shelter System. Originally, with his layout 2 months in advance, Zhao Chen could not guarantee whether he could survive the volcanic eruption. However, with the help of the system, then everything is possible. Ding, distributing beginner gift packages. Survival Point X 1000 Pet Enhancement Potion X1 Human Gene Improvement Agent X1. The sound of rewards kept ringing in Zhao Chen's mind. Every item has great value and can help it survive better in harsh natural environments. Survival Point. Needless to say, this is the currency of the system. The second pet enhancement potion, injected into the pet's body, can significantly improve the pet's physical fitness and slightly enhance their intelligence, making them a powerful helper for the owner. Extract. Zhao Chen's mind twitched. A green pet enhancement potion appeared in his hand. Rhubarb sits down. Woo. Hear the master's command. The naturally loyal Rhubarb sat on the ground without hesitation, constantly wagging its tail. For a dog, being able to stay by its owner's side, a simple touch of the head, a regular meal, can make it happy for several days, and it is very easy to obtain a sense of satisfaction. Don't move around, I'll give you a shot. Woo-woo, seeing the needle in the master's hand, the Rhubarb immediately trembled. Remembering the memory of being injected with insecticides when I was a child, but it still managed to restrain itself. If it were a more irritable animal, it would give you 2 claws on the spot, causing you to scratch your skin and flesh, or hide in a corner in fear, making you spend a lot of effort to catch it. G. The needle tip pierced into the body of rhubarb. The green pet enhancement potion has been fully infused into its body. Leaving the empty potion tube aside, Zhao Chen touched the head of Dahuang as if calming its emotions. Quickly, the dog forgot about the pain and continued to lick Zhao Chen's palm with its rough tongue. The effect of the potion was also slowly emerging, with the most obvious being the growth of body size. The original body height of 40 centimeters has been directly increased to 80 centimeters. The body has also become more agile, with significant improvements in strength, speed, and stamina. Ding, successfully used pet enhancement potion. Pet physical fitness has been upgraded to the level of adult Tibetan Mastiff, pet intelligence upgraded to the level of human 7-year-old child. The sound of the shelter system rang out again. After injecting rhubarb with a pet-enhancing potion, all the changes in various bodily functions were presented to Zhao Chen. The physical fitness of adult Tibetan Mastiffs. A large and fierce dog, known as the Tengu. There is also a saying that one mastiff fights 3 wolves, but this is a bit exaggerated. In a 1.1 battle, its combat effectiveness is similar to that of a wild wolf. If a human does not hold a weapon, charging up barehanded is just an extra meal for it. And, in terms of spiritual improvement, enable rhubarb to understand its meaning more clearly, coupled with an absolutely loyal personality. It can be said that they are trustworthy partners in the apocalypse. The effect seems pretty good. Zhao Chen took out the human gene improvement potion, which appeared pure purple inside. Aiming it at his arm, he injected all the pure purple medicine into his body, accompanied by his blood circulation, flowing throughout his body. Next second, I only feel the heart beating faster and faster. My whole body seemed to boil, as if genes were being reborn from the ashes. About 5 minutes have passed. This feeling slowly dissipated. My whole body was light and my brain was clear. My strength had increased by at least 2 times, and some minor physical problems had also been cured. The myopia, which was originally a bit severe, has now returned to a normal state. Ding, successfully used human gene improvement potion. Host has twice the physical fitness of an average person, slight improvement in host memory and learning ability. Call out. Zhao Chen gently exhaled a breath. The sense of fullness emanating from his body filled him with even more confidence in surviving in the upcoming apocalypse. Looking up at the abandoned air raid shelter in front of me, there was no entrance, but a semi-elliptical opening that was 4 meters high and 5 meters wide. I took out a flashlight from my backpack and turned on the light. This air raid shelter, located 20 meters underground and abandoned for a long time, is completely pitch black inside. If it weren't for carrying a flashlight in his hand, Zhao Chen wouldn't have dared to step in easily. Rhubarb, let's go. Woo! Rhubarb responded joyfully. Quickly running to the front of its owner, it maintains a high level of vigilance in the face of unfamiliar environments. However, in order to protect the safety of its owner, it also chooses to walk at the forefront. In case of any accidents, it can quickly convey the message and make the owner run out quickly. One person. A dog. Slowly stepping into this abandoned air raid shelter. P.S. New book upload, seeking a wave of flowers, tips, monthly passes, and review tickets. 3 things to do when reading. Read, collect, and reward. Chapter 3. Upgrade. Poor quality power system. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Step by step. The crisp footsteps echoed in the pitch-black air raid shelter. Passing through a gentle slope of 100 meters, Zhao Chen arrived at an underground space of 20 meters. According to the information in the temporary land deed, this air raid shelter is 50 meters long, 40 meters wide, and 4 meters high, with a total volume of 8,000 cubic meters. If properly renovated, it can definitely be turned into a considerable shelter. If you live alone, you can definitely live a very fulfilling life. Rock Refuge, Upgrade Direction. Steel Shelter, 2000, Upgrade Effect. The outer defense will be replaced with 5 meters thick steel, enhancing the defense of the shelter. Additional attributes can be added to consume a certain survival point based on the effect. Abandoned Power System, Upgrade Direction. Poor Quality Power System, 800, Upgrade Effect. Restore the power system of the shelter, with a fixed power supply of 30 degrees per day. A small amount of discarded light bulbs can restore lighting. Unable to store electricity, additional attributes can be added to consume a certain survival point based on the effect. Abandoned Sewage System, Upgrade Direction. Poor Quality Sewage System, 800, Upgrade Effect. Restore the shelter's sewage system, with a fixed daily discharge of 10 kilograms, including sewage, food residue, etc. Additional attributes can be added to consume a certain survival point based on the effect. Abandoned Ventilation System, Upgrade Direction. Poor Quality Ventilation System, 800, Upgrade Effect. Restore the ventilation system of the shelter, which can provide 10 people with oxygen per day. Unable to filter the air, additional attributes can be added to consume a certain survival point based on the effect. Lightweight Iron Axe, Upgrade Direction. 100 Forged Steel Axes, 20, Upgrade Effect. Increase the sharpness of the axe blade and the toughness of the axe handle. Additional attributes can be added to consume a certain survival point based on the effect. In an empty air raid shelter. There are only 4 places that can be upgraded in all aspects. On the other hand, there are many items carried by Zhao Chen that can be upgraded, and the prices are very affordable. There are still 2 months left until the global disaster. The upgrade of the shelter's defense level is not urgent at the moment and can be temporarily postponed. The sewage system and ventilation system are not urgent either. The outside world can still survive and can be accommodated. However, the power system needs to recover quickly. Holding a flashlight in one hand and touching one's chin in the other. Zhao Chen kept thinking about the plan for using survival points. Although the beginner gift package rewarded 1000 survival points, good steel should be used on the blade. If he uses it randomly, it will definitely reduce his chances of survival. I won't mention anything else for now. Restoring the power system is definitely a top priority. After all, this rock shelter was pitch black. If it weren't for a flashlight in his hand and rhubarb beside him, Zhao Chen wouldn't dare to walk in alone. Most humans fear darkness. In this pitch black environment 20 meters underground, without the companionship of light and creatures, one will eventually go crazy. Upgrade the abandoned power system. Zhao Chen silently recited in his heart. Next second. The 1000 survival points in the system panel instantly dropped to 200 survival points. Subsequently, the abandoned power system of this rock shelter began to slowly recover, and the remaining 10 light bulbs suddenly lit up, giving the pitch black space a faint glow. Although it cannot be illuminated clearly, the environment of the entire rock shelter can still be preliminarily seen. You can see everything at a glance. There is nothing. The entire rock shelter is empty. Poor quality power system, upgrade direction. Primary power system, 2000, upgrade effect. Fixed power supply of 300 degrees per day, can be provided to any building in the shelter. Additional attributes can be added to consume a certain survival point based on the effect. Upgrading the power system again requires a sufficient survival point of 2000. This is not the current impoverished Zhao Chen. The numbers that can be gathered for a while can only be temporarily abandoned. Poor quality power system. Daily fixed power supply of 30 degrees. No use of wind, water, or diesel combustion. Although I don't understand the principle of electricity generation, as long as there is electricity available, 30 kilowatt-hours of electricity per day is barely enough in the early stages. After all, 10 light bulbs consume 0.1 degrees of electricity per hour. Unfortunately, the backpack is too small to hold too many things. Otherwise, bringing a blanket and a tent can improve the quality of sleep by 1 level. The temperature in December is really cold. Zhao Chen rubbed his hands, causing his body temperature to rise slightly. Although wearing a down jacket, this rock shelter is located in the suburbs, and with no entrance, winter cold winds continue to howl in. This is still afternoon weather, and it will be even more difficult to endure in the evening. After installing the internal buildings of the shelter, I also need to build a sturdy gate myself. On the one hand, it is to isolate from the cold. On the other hand, it is also to guard against humanity. In the context of global disasters, Zhao Chen does not want to put himself in a dangerous situation. No, we need to chop some firewood back. Otherwise, even if I don't freeze to death tonight, I will still catch a cold. Rhubarb, come with me. I put my phone in my pocket. Zhao Chen took out the light iron axe from his backpack and removed the cotton cloth wrapped around the axe blade. Can both chop firewood and defend oneself. This is definitely a good thing. As for the backpack containing compressed biscuits, canned meat, and mineral water, Zhao Chen plans to put it in a rock shelter. Anyway, he is cutting firewood nearby, and with the vigilance of rhubarb, others cannot steal it. P.S. New book upload, seeking a wave of flowers, tips, monthly passes, and review tickets. Fei Lu's novel, Fei Wants You to Look Good. Instructions for this book, with additional rules. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Due to the slow update of Global Cataclysm. Unlimited escalation of shelters, by Mechanical Brain. The author couldn't help but open a book of the same type. I want to build a shelter in my heart and constantly cultivate and develop. When playing games, I prefer to develop. I am an infrastructure maniac who often likes to hoard a large amount of resources, build a lot of defense facilities, or explode a lot of soldiers before trying to level someone else's base. Moreover, the author has a serious fear of insufficient firepower, and his biggest hobby in playing strategy games is to use absolute firepower to destroy the opponent. So, the content of this book. 70% of the content will be used to develop shelters. 30% of the content will be used for exploration and searching for supplies. I tend to focus on slow-paced articles. With a development trend, I naturally won't make it to the sky in one step, otherwise I might as well write fantasy and directly kill the entire scene with a 999-second slash. Following the path of survival in the technology department, there will be no awakening of abilities or monster mutations, occasionally with a bit of dark technology. Global disasters have been identified. Meteorite falls, soaring radiation, ice age, terrifying rat infestations, infinite typhoons, extreme high temperatures, volcanic eruptions. If readers have significant opinions on global disasters. Alternatively, suggestions for developing shelters can be made in the comments section. It can be weapons and equipment, shelter buildings, or something to enjoy. After all, the author's individual abilities are limited, and in order to create a perfect shelter, there will eventually be areas that cannot be considered, requiring the assistance of readers. In terms of updates, starting from Thursday every day. 3,000 more flowers, 1 more. 1,000 more evaluation tickets, 1 more. 20 more monthly tickets, 1 more. Increase the number of rewards by 5, 1 more. If everyone is happy to watch, please vote for some free flowers, monthly tickets, and evaluation tickets. This is the motivation for the author's early efforts to update Fei Lu's novel, Fei Wants You to Look Good.